John, one of the problems is our government legislature is not good.
That's right. I didn't know mandates were a problem.
We got ours in, and then you can.
Pardon me, sir?
I said we got ours in just under the. It's a fairly new technology class. Then now they let you use water to cool them, so you have to use air to cool them. You know what that means? Less efficient.
Why not you?
Oh, well, the government's going to have to do that.
Anybody hear me?
Self-sufficient anyway, I'm afraid.
Got you, Glenn.
All righty.
Welcome everyone to Kent County Levy Court combined business meeting and committee meetings for this evening. And in case you missed the sign on the door, if you have a hat on, please remove it. If you have a cell phone, please put it on vibrate. And please no eating in the courtroom here. So before we proceed and open the special business meeting, I'll turn the microphone over to the county administrator, and he'll explain the procedures for the WebEx and calling in by phone.
Thank you, Mr. President. This meeting is being conducted at 555 Bay Road in Dover. This is an official business meeting of Levy Court. We're also offering the meeting over the internet via WebEx, and we have at least one commissioner joining us via WebEx, Commissioner Howe. We may have other guests who will be joining us via WebEx as well. And for their benefit, we provide a little instruction on how to proceed. If they're using a mobile device, we ask that they keep it on mute until at such time during the meeting there's opportunity for public comment. And at that time, if you would press *3 on your mobile device to raise your electronic hand, that'll signal our operator to bring you into the meeting room. Similarly, if you're on a computer or desktop, laptop, the graphic icons for the raise hand on the WebEx should be activated when you're ready to address any matter before Levy Court. Also, to unmute yourself on the phone is a *6. We'll remind our guests of these signals at the appropriate time through the meeting. As an official proceeding of Levy Court, remind the commissioners and all the public present that we're operating under the Levy Court rules of procedure that apply to Levy Court business meetings as well as the Mason's Rules of Order. Mr. President, I'll turn the floor back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we start, I'd like to recognize State Senator Stephanie Hansen in the audience and former Senator Nancy Cook in the audience. Welcome. Glad to have you here. All right. We'll open the special business meeting and we'll call to order. We'll ask Commissioner Howe via the phone to offer our invocation, our Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Maston, and a moment of silence to our troops and first responders, Commissioner Sweeney. All rise. Commissioner Howe?
Yes. Let's pray. Thank you, Father, for bringing us all together. And we just pray that tonight all of our proceedings will be pleasing to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor our military, law enforcement, firefighters, paramedics, and other first responders who have lost their lives in the line of duty, protecting and fighting for our freedoms. We also honor all first responders and medical staff who have succumbed to COVID-19 virus complications contracted through close interaction with infected patients, losing their lives caring for others. As of today, more than 728,890 Americans nationwide, 2,037 here in Delaware, and 430 here in Kent County have lost their lives to COVID. And across the United States, 4 additional law enforcement officers have died from complications of COVID. Please remember these individuals who died in the line of duty, as well as keeping their families in your thoughts and prayers as they deal with the loss of their loved ones. Correctional Officer Tomaloma Scanlon from the Fresno County Sheriff's Office, California, Deputy Constable Kareem Atkins from the Harris County Constable's Office, Texas, Police Officer Yanni Chirino, Hollywood Police Department in Florida, and Police Officer Ryan Hayworth from the Knightdale Police Department in North Carolina. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Commissioner Sweeney. At this time, need a motion for the adoption of this evening's business agenda.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Maston. Unless there's any questions, I don't see any. Can we have a roll call, please, on that?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. And this evening we have 6 commissioners here. Commissioner Howe is here via phone. And we do have a quorum. So we'll continue into this evening's agenda. First item on the agenda is a Kent County special presentation. And I believe we can have Ms. Tanaka read that for us. Laura, do you have a copy there? Can you read that for us, please?
Resolution 3903, Kent County Medal for Nancy W. Cook. Whereas Nancy W. Cook dedicated her life to public service for nearly 40 years by serving as the distinguished state senator for the 15th Senate District from 1974 to 2010, and then as Kent County Register of Wills from 2011 to 2013, and whereas Nancy W. Cook began her storied career as the very first elected female Democratic Delaware State Senator, and was soon thereafter appointed to the Finance Committee before chairing or co-chairing the prestigious Budget Writing Joint Finance Committee for the next 25 years. And whereas during her long tenure in the Delaware Senate, Nancy W. Cook championed the Ag Land Preservation Program, the state's Rainy Day Fund, the state's AAA credit rating, among other legislation, and has been honored for her contributions by numerous organizations, including the Hall of Fame of Delaware Women. And whereas Nancy W. Cook has been recommended for a Kent County medal in accordance with the provisions of Kent County Levy Court policy and the requirements thereof. Now therefore be it resolved that the Kent County Levy Court does hereby recognize, commend, and award the Honorable Nancy W. Cook of Kenton, Delaware, for a Kent County medal for meritorious service on this, the 19th day of October, 2021.
Thank you, Lori. Does anyone have any questions? If not, I need a motion.
I make a motion that we accept Resolution 3903 to honor Nancy Cook with the Kent County Medal of Honor.
Second the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Maston to approve Resolution 3903, and there were multiple seconds, but the one I heard most was Commissioner Angel. And can we have roll call, please, on that?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals Resolution 3903 has been approved, and the Kent County Medal for Nancy W. Cook has been approved. And with that being said, if all the commissioners and county administrator would meet me down front, and Senator Cook, if you would come forward. Well, we're glad that you're totally shocked because I'm glad that you're totally shocked because that doesn't happen too often. I mean, Nancy Cook knows just about everything that's going on. So I'm glad we kept this a secret from you, and I'm glad Tom was able to get you here. And we've thought about this, and we don't just give these medals out willy-nilly. We give them to people that truly, truly deserve them. And in our estimation, you are one of those people. And I believe this is only since the inception of the county medal that I believe you're number 33. Really? Yeah, so there's not too many before you. But it's certainly well-deserved. And we appreciate everything that you've done for Kent County and Levy Court over your years, being involved in the big house across the street over there, and since you've left there, you've done a lot for us. So I guess that's your nature. So we're certainly are pleased to be able to present this to you this evening, and I'll let each of the other commissioners say a few words if they'd like, and then we'll go with a presentation.
Well, Senator, all I can say is I've known you a long time. You've become a friend and a mentor, and I want to thank you for all those years of service and what I've learned from you, too. Congratulations.
Nancy, it's truly an honor.
I'm not sure if it's working.
At any rate, Nancy, it's truly an honor to award the medal to you. I can't think of anybody any more deserving or anybody better to look up to as a mentor. And again, I thank you for your service to the county and to the state. Thank you.
Senator. Just not. I mean, wow. It's an absolute honor. There's no question about that. I would have to state that you're probably second on the list of most deserving individuals to receive the award. Of course, I'm a little biased because you probably have guessed who number one was, for me anyway, when my dad showed up and got that. So, but in true spirit, wow, congratulations. It just so impressed by you and the opportunity to speak to you on different topics, different levels, and your understanding. And just, it's like talking to to a goat. Greatest of all time. It really is. You know what I mean? So I'll say it. I don't say that easily. I don't say that lightly. Honored to be able to be here. Congratulations. Thank you.
Senator Cook, congratulations. This is probably one of the most well-deserved medals that we've given out. I think that your service to the entire state put you in line to get this. So we appreciate it. And if you want to invite Tom down, I'm sure he's got a suit on, so Tom can come down.
Congratulations and well deserved.
Well, Senator Cook, congratulations. It's a well-deserved honor. Your influence continues even past your elected office term, which is very impressive. You continue to be active. Whenever I get over to Legislative Hall, I usually run into you over there, and you're a force in this state. And we're so fortunate to have you a force in this state in Kent County. You've done so many good things for Kent County and for the state of Delaware, and we just congratulate you and want to honor you tonight with this medal. And where's Tommy? Hey, Tommy, good to see you. Would you like to say anything to your mom?
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously this medal is a great honor, but this group has pulled off the biggest surprise. I mean, she thought she was coming here for Mark Biddle to be honored tonight, so she was telling everybody in the lobby, hey, we're here for Mark Biddle and everything. Not the solar panels, by the way. So, but no, once again, thank you to the Levy Court for honoring my mother. She has certainly been just my inspiration throughout life. During actually our wedding, the song that I played when I danced with her is "If It Hadn't Been for You," and you know, that's it. You do that for everybody. You have really made changes and a positive impact on many people throughout life. I'm proud to be your son.
Thank you. Very nice.
Now, since Senator, thanks to your mom,
Since Commissioner Maston made the recommendation for this medal, I'm going to have her present that to you at this time, and then we'll do some pictures with the medal and of course, with the resolution here. Commissioner Maston?
Tommy, thanks so much for pulling this off. I was worried up through today that she'd find out because she knows everything. But Nancy, sincerely, I don't know of anybody any more worthy of this medal than you are. And
why don't you take it out there and put it on?
How special.
Yes, it is very special for a very special lady.
I want to take my shirt off here.
Well, just the jacket will work. Just the jacket.
Hey, don't get that excited here.
Nobody,
but,
I got this the right way.
Yeah.
Nobody'd be ready for the rest.
On the back, it's engraved number 33, Nancy W. Cook, 10/19/2021. Wow. And, of course, there's the front of it.
Oh, wow.
Beautiful.
So beautiful. And how special.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
What? Oh, and then go to work. Thanks for the work.
Here's the box.
Oh, wow. How special.
So feel free to wear that medal wherever, whenever you want to, and wherever pride, knowing that you're one of the very few that has one of those. So we appreciate you. Thank you for everything, and keep on, keep on.
Well, I can't thank you all enough. I truly am surprised. and I certainly will wear this with honor. To be honest with you, it's just going to be a nicer event. This is very special to me, and my heart's in Kent County, and the state's there too, believe me. But I've always tried to look out for our needs, and hopefully I supported. I know there were a few projects we were involved in, the courthouse specifically. Yeah. Yeah. And I can't thank everyone enough. It's a true honor. Thank you very much, really.
Thank you.
It's very emotional. I mean, people would love to see me cry for other reasons. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Tommy, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Be on Facebook tonight.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Oh, it should be all right. They won't like it. I like doing that.
Congratulations, Senator. Delaney. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of that. Appreciate that. Okay. Any public comments on this one item? The presentation of the Kent County Special presentation for the county medal. Any comments on that particular item? Seeing none. Any commissioner comments?
Mr. President.
Commissioner Angel.
While Commissioner Angel's getting ready, I believe, Mr. Kennedy, do we have a public comment on WebEx?
If there's anyone on WebEx who would like to make a public comment at this time, please press *3 on your phone or raise your hand. I see no hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Angel. Join it.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, Colin Powell passed this week. And I was awarded a Colin Powell scholarship last year to Professional Academy. And 13 rules that he lived by. And I just want to read what the Academy put out today to share with you. General Powell's leadership today. First, it will look better in the morning. You may not believe this today as you grieve your loss. But as he said in rule number 1, it will look better in the morning. Second, perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. His rule 13 speaks for itself. And if you need to get mad about this terrible event, go ahead and get mad. But remember his rule number 2, get mad and then get over it. Those would have been his wishes and his words, and that came from the Academy, and I was supposed to pass that on, which I just did. So on behalf of Colin Powell's family and the Academy and graduates, I want to thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Angel. Any other commissioner comments? I just wanted to mention that this past Thursday I attended one of our regular attendees' funerals. Mr. Norris Hudson passed away last week ago. And his funeral was Thursday. I went to the funeral. His family was there. Gave him our condolences from Levy Court and my personal condolences. And I'm sure we'll certainly miss Norris. He was the one that kept Levy Court straight. He'd come for any variety of issues and give us his side of the story. So just wanted to mention that before time passes too far. And any other commissioner comments? Seeing none, Then I need a motion to adjourn to committee meetings.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Maston to adjourn to committee meetings. Lori, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell? Mr. Howell?
That was a yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Roll call reveals that we are adjourned from our special business meeting to our committee meetings. I just want to remind everyone in the audience and the commissioners, this is not a public hearing. It's not a public debate. We're here to hear about each issue, and then at the end we'll have a public comment session where we can hear folks in the audience hear your side, but like I said, it will not be a debate. So at this time, the first, and depending on how many people would like to speak, we're probably have to limit everything to 4 to 5 minutes this evening because we do have quite a lengthy agenda, and staff wants to go home. So with that being said, Planning Services Committee falls under Commissioner Buxton, Chair, and I'll turn this committee over to you, Mr. Buxton.
Appreciate that, Mr. President. I believe Ms. Keefe will be joining us momentarily, so we can have a discussion. We've got a little starter kit first. It's a good project there. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. I come to Levy Court tonight for the Community Development Block Grant Program, and we're looking to get approval on 3 jobs over the $25,000 threshold. I must apologize, I did have a typo on the 3rd bullet point line, award contract 1903R-8. That total contract amount should be $28,800. I did have a typo there. So I'm open for any questions if anybody has any with respect to these 3 projects.
Just maybe a general comment question. For starters, appreciate you being here, Mike, and I appreciate everything that you do. This isn't something that's routine, even in a strong construction market, so we don't have the ability to adjust anyway, right? To raise the rate that would force you to come in. I'm not saying we should, but you don't see that need right now anyway?
No, I do see a need there.
Okay.
The Delaware State Housing Authority has increased our expenditure amounts. They did that for the FY21 guidelines and made it retroactive back to FY19. So therefore, they've raised the limit $5,000 for a manufactured home on a rental lot. That is now $20,000. They've raised it as well for a manufactured home on an owner lot. That is now $30,000. And we can spend up to $40,000 on a stick-built home on somebody's own property.
I guess we would suggest working with Ms. Kiefer and Mr. Pettit-Dimash, right? Is that how that would work to, would be a policy change? I'm asking you to coach me up on what we need to do here to assist you. All right?
Yeah.
So you'll, it's not tonight to be decided, but you'll work on that and get it back to us.
Correct.
Super. Thank you. Any comments regarding the topic at hand? Well done.
All right, thank you very much.
This is a show of hands. Would that be a public hearing or consent agenda?
It could be consent agenda if you're ready.
All right. He's fine. Commissioner Howe? You're good, right?
Right.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate your
Can
time.
you hear me okay?
We can, sure.
All right.
I like to remind folks, typically we're not here. We're down in front at a table in a much more relaxed atmosphere. And my problem is I'm pretty good at the relaxed atmosphere, not good at being up here. So, Ms. Kiefer, you're going to join us now, and we're going to have a conversation about the next topic for discussion. Before we get started, I'd like to present my thoughts, and I won't go into detail about what's getting ready to be discussed other than why I think we're here. And it is just that, to have the conversation between as many players as we can in this type of arena, whether it's a simple constituent, a large landowner, a farmer, an elected official, someone that's in the industry, it doesn't matter. To have the conversation to say, okay, we have this process, we have these solar farms. It appears there's some popularity, there's some growth in that area, and it's coming to Kent County. And the question tonight before us is, are we suited to absorb it? Is there a better method of doing it? Is a moratorium a reasonable option? That's it. We can decide tonight to move forward. We can decide tonight to put it on the table or on the shelf. But we need to have that conversation because, in my opinion, it was not a fair process what happened a couple weeks ago. For anyone involved, especially the landowners who weren't aware of the situation and came here to present their concerns. We've heard the concerns, but what are we going to do about it? That's the question. We've heard the concerns. Now what are we going to do about it? So that's it. Appreciate your time. Ms. Kiefer, if you'd like to tee us up, have at it.
Thank you, Commissioner. As Commissioner Buxton said, there are effectively two questions before the Levy Court. One is, does the Levy Court want to go forward with a moratorium? Right, the ordinance was introduced last week. If we were to pursue it, it would have to go through a public hearing schedule with the Planning Commission in December, and then go through public hearing at the Levy Court. So the question is it necessary? For context, in terms of the demand we're seeing in the department, 2 projects came in last Tuesday, one of which was the one that was denied in September, and another smaller one, about 30 acres, came in. And then we've probably gotten about a half a dozen inquiries in the last couple of weeks. People not entirely ready to move forward, but intend to pursue. And then the follow-up question is the county satisfied with the existing requirements or existing standards for a large-scale solar installation? Right now, they're treated as a public utility, so they are conditional uses in any zoning district. In the memo we provided to you, we looked at what some other jurisdictions are doing. In some jurisdictions, solar arrays are limited to industrial land. They are not permitted on agricultural land. In others, they are permitted on agricultural land, but they've got additional buffers, they've got additional setbacks. The idea is to screen them. In Newcastle County, I believe in 2017, they adopted new regulations where they actually allow them by right in many of their zoning districts, but they limit them in their suburban reserve district to only 1,000 acres total in the entire district. So we've put together at least some thoughts, right? Is this a use we want to allow throughout the county, or do we want to limit it to industrial? A potential drawback for industrial is that's fairly limited in the county, and it would take it out of play for potential employers. So there's some cost if we do that as well. Does the county want to limit it perhaps only to the agricultural conservation zone? Do we want to have a conversation of inside the growth zone versus outside the growth zone? Those are the sorts of alternatives in front of you. So I guess the question is, are we comfortable allowing them in all of the zoning districts?
Gentlemen, madam, may I jump in just briefly? I think we teed up at possibly the end, the decisions that are in front of us. I may argue maybe that the moratorium is the second question. First one is, are we comfortable with our current set of standards? And if not, what do we want to set a course, the staff, in what direction on options, right? Not necessarily stating that we, as a group tonight, have to figure that out specifically. But if it's something that can't be done without, per se, a moratorium, then there's your answer. Yes, we need it. If the changes can be done during the course of business without a moratorium, recognizing that some folks can come forward, then we can do that also. Let me ask a technical or legal question to counsel. The moratorium, in your estimation, where would the line in the sand for application already in the pipeline? Do you know where that would be drawn? Would it be at the moment it's officially adopted, or would it be upon introduction?
Adoption. And that's based upon some of the research that I did relating to some chancery cases in the 07, 08, 09 timeframe.
One of the thoughts that might be is that the moratorium, while it might stop, maybe a flood, it might also have the reverse effect. It might flood the system with folks that have been queuing themselves up and push that. Is that a possibility, Ms. Kiefer?
Given the reaction we've gotten in the office, yes, that's a distinct possibility.
And nobody's intention is to do that either. So obviously we've got some decisions to make. If I may, one of the things that I would like to learn tonight, during the presentation, there was talk about, wasn't quite clear on the farming community, maybe a representative of the entire county, and what their thoughts are. We had passionate pleas from the locals in that area, which clearly made the day, and rightfully so. But I'd like to hear from one or two representatives specifically that I've invited, one from the state possibly, maybe one from the bureaucracy. But more specifically, the first one I'd like to hear from is Mr. Richard Wilkins from the Farm Bureau. Are you good with allowing him to testify tonight, or at least speak to his thoughts? Is that useful to you? I think it is to me. Yes? So I'd like, Mr. Wilkins, if you wouldn't mind presenting yourselves at the podium. I invited you here to kind of weigh in on some thoughts.
Now, Mr. Wilkins, please keep in mind that you're at the podium about to speak, but this is not a public hearing, and we need to limit your time, so please be concise as possible, please.
I brought a couple of informational sheets if that. So as Commissioner Buxton did put it quite eloquently, this is a conversation about this issue. First, let me say that farmers in general are very, very supportive of renewable energy. We have been for decades. These information sheets that I'm handing out are referring to renewable fuels. Huge amount of the agricultural production in the United States today, roughly 30% of the corn produced, is consumed as fuel, renewable fuel. With soybeans, about 50% of the soybeans that we produce that are consumed domestically in the United States. Biodiesel and renewable diesel is a very important product that we produce with the soybean oil. Many farms in Delaware have put up solar panels. Now, a few years ago, there was grant money available. Most of those projects were done when grant money was available. I myself have looked at putting solar panels on my farm. When I got the analysis, because of not having grant money available, because agriculture is a relatively low profit business, the tax credits are not of any value to my farm because I'm not a very good farmer. So it just didn't make sense for me to put solar panels on my farm. But many farmers have. But I will point out that if you go around Delaware and you look at the solar panels that are on farms, for the most part, they are in non-crop areas. Because farmers consider their crop land, their productivity land, to be sacred. If there's some area on their farm that's not able to be cropped, in some cases it's on the rooftops of barns, rooftops of animal housing structures, that they've placed these solar collection panels. I think that this move towards more solar energy in the state of Delaware is a good thing. I'm not an expert on solar voltaic panels collecting energy. All I know is what I hear and what I read. You have to have some type of storage source in order to store this energy. And then in certain climatic conditions, you're not going to be able to produce enough energy. So we still, as a nation, as a global society, we still are going to have to be reliant upon liquid fuels for energy also. And this is why I'm a strong proponent of the renewable fuels that come from agriculture, because they do have a very strong point in our sustainability and climate smart agriculture. Now, what I am somewhat of an expert on is the way that crops are solar energy collectors. Crops, plants, corn, soybeans, wheat, whatever. They are collecting energy from the sun. They are storing that energy in the biomass and the fruits that those plants are producing. So what concerns me with what we're starting to see happen with these very massively sized solar farms that are some already approved, some on the proposal stage, is, here in Delaware, I've been farming here for 45 years. I've had to compete with other land uses in order to become a farmer. I mean, I didn't inherit a farm. This is another land use that farmers are going to have to compete with. We got a lot of young people that really, really would love to be able to have a career and a life in the business of farming. I did some back-of-the-envelope calculations earlier this year that in order to achieve the legislative requirements now, it's going to be between 5 and 8% of Delaware's farmland that would have to come out of production in order to create enough solar farms to produce that much energy. A couple years ago, I had the pleasure of talking with a person in the business of building solar farms. And I asked him, I said, why, this was in the state of Maryland at the time, so why are you taking this beautiful 300-acre farm and putting solar panels up on it? And his answer was, because that's the easiest place to do it. Not that it made the most economic sense there, not that it was the best place to place those panels. It was the easiest place to do it at. I think that we can, whether it's a moratorium, whether it's looking at zoning uses, I think we can achieve both things. I think we can achieve a future with more renewable energy. I think we can achieve a future with more solar energy, but I think we can do it in a smart way. I think that parking lots as an example. Why cannot these solar panels be erected in parking lot areas? Elevated above the parking areas. Functionality, they would serve to help shade the vehicles during those hot summer days. During the wintertime, maybe you wouldn't have to brush the snow off your windshield if you get one of those freak snowstorms while you're in the shopping center. If we could start making sure that buildings are built with enough roof load capacity so that the solar panels can be placed on the top of the roofs. My point is, please don't put another competing land use in the way of farmers, young farmers that need as much of Delaware's great productive cropland available to us in order for us to continue our businesses.
Mr. Wilkins, I'm going to have to wrap up.
Mr. Pepper, that was my last statement. That was my summary.
Good timing. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Wilkins, if you wouldn't mind sticking around for just a second. President Pepper, it is a committee hearing. I did invite Mr. Wilkins to the committee for the purpose of educating us. If we were sitting at a table, it would look a little more normal, I guess. You'd be seated with us. The ask that I might have, not tonight, but would be to how do we have a conversation with farmers throughout the county on what they would like to see and how we could best look at A, leave it alone, or B, make some land use changes. That's what we need moving forward. With or without a moratorium, I would argue we're going to need that. So that would be my ask of you and the others in the audience. Mr. Wilkins, respectfully, I invited you here tonight to send that message out across. I think that would be helpful. I don't know if your thoughts are the same. I think that would be helpful to me. I may not be able to attain this, but I'm going to try to latch on to what our specific rules are when we get there and then follow them. If we need to change them, that's what I need to hear. How do we change them so that what we do in one section doesn't harm someone in a different section who may not have wanted that? That's complicated, may not be able to do it, but that's what I'm hoping for.
Commissioner, I would be more than happy to do everything that I could to facilitate the agriculture sector being part of this conversation with the Levy Court. We could, put together a public meeting. It's a challenging time of the year for Delaware's crop farmers. As we're trying to get our grain crops harvested. So unfortunately, if we can predict a rainy evening, then we could probably have a good informational session.
Reach out to you, certainly. Thank you for attending tonight.
Thank you, and as always, I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much.
One of the other informational pieces that I was looking to gain tonight was the conversation regarding this, what is this incentivized program? the incentives that are being presented to our utility companies. Is there merit behind it? Is there truth to this? Is it a problem or is it not a problem when there's a requirement that they go 40% of a renewable energy portfolio, and the belief that that mandate is fueling this rush to solar farms? Is it evident? Is it true? Is it something we should be worried about? I asked Senator Hansen to attend tonight, and by all means, if you have somebody with you think that's better suited to answer that, they could join you in maybe having that conversation, if I articulated myself correctly. So you're both welcome to join the mic and talk to us.
Thank you, Commissioner Buxton. Stephanie Hansen. I'm the state senator for the 10th district in Delaware, which is generally Middletown, Bexar, Glasgow, and part of Newark, at least for now. But there's redistricting. So the 40%. Here is how I think things have gotten turned around a little bit. So this past year, the state passed Senate Bill 33, which is an increase to the state's required renewable portfolio standard. So I'm currently the chair of the Senate Energy and Environment Committee, and that was my bill. What that standard does is it requires that the state of Delaware have within its energy mix 40% renewable energy by the year 2035. So right now, I think we have 20%, 21%, and it goes up about a percentage or so until we get to 2035, and it'll be 40%. And those renewables can be solar, they can be wind, they can be a number of different things that are set out in the statute. Because right now, if you go to flip your switch on, you don't just have energy from one source. You have energy from many different sources, and the makeup is quite varied. In fact, the makeup today of just, if you look at just DP&L, because we have those, we had a forum about that just last week. If you look at what your actual makeup is in, as far as DP&L is concerned, if you flip the switch, 20.6% coal, 38.9% natural gas, 34.5% nuclear, and then there's a small percentage, 5.9% of renewables. So 5.9% is renewables, and out of that that's generally made up of hydroelectric, which we don't have any of that here. So we're buying a lot of our energy from out of state. We buy the majority of the energy that we use here in our state comes from out of state, which we've identified really as lost opportunities for us here. It's also dependency on things that are coming, our relationships and depending on what other people are doing in other states. So, and the other part of the renewables that are currently made up are hydroelectric, which is the majority, wind, and there's a small bit of solid waste, and solar. So we're talking about a very, very small amount, which is why the push with a renewable portfolio standard was, let's see what we can do to bump up that number. Because what we're ending up doing, even though the renewable portfolio standard tells us right now we have to have a 20% renewable mix, and I just told you what we have, and you're not hearing 20% in there, right? What we're having to do is buy renewable energy credits, generally from other states. So what we did after we passed the renewable portfolio standard is we recognized that in order for us to get to 40% renewables, really 40%, we want to do the best we can to try and encourage additional solar and other renewable generation here in our state. Because if we keep it here in our state, it's jobs here for us, It's independence here for us. And the cost of solar right now is competitive and or lower than natural gas. It's certainly lower than coal right now. So it means less expense on your electric bill if we're switching over to solar, which helps your constituents as well. So that's the push to get us to more renewables. And the question was, how are we going to get there? So one of the things that I did, the big thing that I did was I formed what was called the Energy Stakeholders Group. And that's made up of representatives from DP&L, from the co-op, from DMEC, from Cesar Rodney Institute, the Sierra Club, Department of Natural Resources, Renewable Energy Task Force. We gathered together the public advocate, the Public Service Commission. We gathered together all of those folks together and said, okay, here we have our renewable portfolio standard now has been raised. What should we do to try to get there? What's the way for us to try and get there? And that group decided that, okay, well, we think that community solar is the way to start looking at it. We should be able to begin to generate our own solar in state, but there are some problems in our current code. That's why you're not seeing very much of it. That's why you hadn't seen very much of it in the past. There were just a handful of projects because there were some real roadblocks in our code the way that it currently existed. So we set to work on legislation, and it took about 4 or 5 months to put together with everyone at the table. And in the end, everyone was in favor of this. When you can get the Cesar Rodney Institute and the Sierra Club on the same page, being supportive of an ordinance, as well as our administrative agencies and all 3 utilities, I think you've really done something. So what we decided was we needed to remove some major roadblocks that currently existed in our code. There was a major roadblock on size. The current ability to build solar was limited to those facilities could only be community solar could only be 2 megawatts in size. So we raised that to 4 megawatts because that made more financial sense. There was a problem in that you had to identify all your customers ahead of time before you even went to get approval for this, approval to build. That's like trying to identify all your homeowners before you build a subdivision. It was something that was stopping the process. Everybody had to be located on the same distribution feeder that the electric distribution company had. That was a stumbling block as well. And there was no regulatory program set up at the state level or any place else that was going to be able to regulate and provide consumer protection should these systems be built. So what we did was we put together an ordinance that then changed those, moved the roadblocks, put in place the Public Service Commission as a regulatory body. They're currently going through the reg writing process right now. The draft proposed regs are out there. They should be done by March. And the Department of Justice will be handling the consumer protection piece. So that, I think, has been a driver in some of the applications that you're seeing now. Because from what we understood, there were a lot of people that were looking at Delaware as a great place to come and do solar projects, energy generating projects, but they couldn't because our current code was so restrictive. And we purposefully sent out to remove some of those barriers. And we removed the ones that we saw. And we have another ordinance that we're working on right now regarding net metering, which is the next 2.0 problem that you come up with. But that, I think, is part of maybe what's driving, you're seeing a lot of people, particularly for this community solar size range, that up to 4 megawatts in power. Because now we heard that there were a lot of people that wanted to come here. They were very excited about the fact that we were working on this ordinance. The bill was passed and was actually just signed a month ago or so. The governor just signed it. And so there were a lot of, you'll see a lot of these applications. Now the 40%, that doesn't have anything to do with a subsidy. That's just the amount of renewable energy that has to be in that mix that we use as a state. It's actually as DP&L, because it really just applies to DP&L. It doesn't apply to the co-op, and it doesn't apply to DEC, although they will tell you that they have goals that are very similar to that. But this law doesn't apply to them. It just applies to DP&L. And so DP&L then would purchase, like I said, renewable energy credits from Pennsylvania. We have wind contracts from Pennsylvania, expensive wind contracts from Pennsylvania right now that we are using, that we are paying for. It would be great to have our own renewable energy right here, that we don't have to deal with expensive wind contracts out of Pennsylvania. So it's important that I think that you know that, at least from the state's perspective, and all these groups that continue to meet every 2 weeks, this energy stakeholders group meets every 2 weeks. You are welcome to come. I will send you the email link, and you can listen in. They're all virtual, and hear the discussion on things that could be of importance to you. But the thought is, we need to do as much as we can reasonably, moving forward, to get more renewables into our state, because we are 50th out of the 50 states when it comes to the amount of energy generation within our state. We're not 35, we're not 40, we are 50th. DC is the only place that generates less energy within their borders than Delaware.
Senator Hansen, I do appreciate it. I have a couple things. And so your conversation was informative, complete. There's a clear understanding of what was presented. We talked about subsidies and others. We can worry about that later. But the intent of your initiative, to your credit, is successful. Here's the problem. It's successful, and what it's created is a ripple effect. When we hear from testimony from landowners who have stated very clearly that they have been, I don't know if the word's overwhelmed, by requests to sell their property specific to solar farming. And that there are individual landowners outside of the growth zone who don't share the same vision that you have. They welcome the fact that you want to go renewable. They want to play a role. But when it's a 40% blank statement, 40% that includes solar and includes wind and other renewables, but when the market's set up so that solar, giving our pristine area and farmland in the county, is the most viable path, we start to chew up a lot of farmland in areas that we never envisioned to be chewed up. In fact, the folks on the east side, you may be familiar with this, the folks on the east side of Route 1 were asked many years ago to take a hit. They took it, right? They've dealt with that hit, which is limiting and restricting growth outside of the growth zone east of Route 1. When they came here the other night, they articulated that very clearly to us, that you asked, we delivered. Please don't ask us to absorb this state initiative, because it's coming to our area. So I don't want to ramble. I commend you for your efforts. I'm not here to dissect, debate whether or not it's positive or not. It appears that it is. I don't think anyone's against renewable, right, in some form or fashion. What we are against is a program. You said it best. When you went from 2 to 4, the money became good, right? The outside investors then did what you said. They said, this is the place to go now. The problem with that is where they're seeking to go is some of our most, valuable, sensitive areas in the county. So I don't know if I articulated my thoughts right. Maybe you guys want to jump in and help me. We're not bashing the program. That's not the intent. Okay, Mr. Pepper.
Senator Hansen, thanks for being here. Really do appreciate it. What you said was very informative. Commissioner Buxton hit on a couple of things briefly there. One, way back when Governor Carper was governor, he asked us to limit growth on the east side of Route 1. And that's what we attempted to do, and that's what the farmers on the east side of Route 1 agreed to do. And we created a scenic byway up Route 9, and it's also part of our tourism industry, with Little Creek and Lipsick being our quaint villages, our marketing program for our tourism in King County. So I think what a lot of people that have called me and have emphasized is, don't take that away from us. Don't take that tourism dollars away from us. Don't take that beauty away from us. So I think that was one of the concerns with any kind of solar development on the east side of Route 1. The other thing, you very eloquently went through the whole process that you did to get this bill signed by the governor. At what point, what I've been asked by numerous people is, at what point was the county brought into the conversation and asked what effect this would be on the county and county land? I've been asked by numerous people about that, and I didn't have an answer. So you're here tonight, so give us an answer.
I don't know that the counties were specifically brought to the table about this. I know we had DEC and DMEC, that we had the utility suppliers that supply all the energy to all three counties and the municipalities within those. I think that's probably the best response that I can give to you. I mean, we were looking at, so here's the thing. We were looking at it as to the use of the property. Is this an industry that we want to encourage in the state of Delaware, yes or no? And then setting up a state process for, if it's going to occur, here's the process. But when it comes down to the actual land use decisions and where this is going to be appropriate, that is truly your domain. That is up to you. I mean, you represent the constituents in this area, and it's up to you to do the weighing between the scenic value versus farm value versus property rights issues versus a state environmental obligation. It's where the actual use is then put is really your purview. And I didn't come here tonight to tell you where you should put it. I came here just to give you kind of the state's perspective on how we got here from a principle and subject matter question of why is solar now becoming important? Why are you hearing so much about it? Well, we just went through that.
Thank you.
But where it goes is up to you, and I do have...
I know, and I know you back in the 90s were president of Newcastle County Council, and back then one of our concerns and gripes was the state doesn't contact the counties with issues like this that's directly going to affect the counties. I know you were a part of that back then, and and I'm still part of that, and I kind of get a little burr when the state does things and doesn't put the county at least in the mix, or at least make a phone call or say, hey, we're going to have these hearings or whatever, and you might want to show up, as we had you show up tonight. So that's one of the things that I think is part of the issue here. If the county had been brought into this mix early on, we probably wouldn't have been here tonight, because we probably would have had a lot of these issues resolved prior to all these applications coming before us. And we've approved, I believe, 2.
Yes.
One out by Hartley and one down by Harrington. Mm-hmm. So we're not against solar energy whatsoever. I mean, the concern is where it's going to be and how it's going to affect the people that live around it. And just like when you were on Newcastle County Council, same issues. So, I just wanted to bring that out tonight to let people hear, and also bring to you some of the questions that people have asked me that I didn't have the answer to. And but again, thank you for being here tonight. And I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Buxton.
Commissioner Angel.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Hanson, we are not against solar. I think the rumor started that we were shutting down solar in our county, but that's not what we're trying to do. For me, what happened, a couple of the answers that I never got, but you know, we want to know about the batteries. We can't throw batteries in our trash can, but yet we have these million batteries that are going to be recharging. Where are they going to go? There's nobody knows what's happening to them, and they can't go in our disposal in our system. So I want to know what's going to happen to them. That's one of the causes. And a farmer brought up to me that after 30, 35 years of land not being utilized, it takes 3 to 5 years to get that soil nutrients back up so it's usable again. I didn't know that until he brought that to my attention. Just those kinds of things that we have no idea. I would like, and Joey and Commissioner Maston met with DENREC, his name, Sean Garvin, and just put a bug in his ear that we need to sit down and talk. And I would like to see that happen. I did leave a message, but I haven't heard back yet. So we'd like to have a nice discussion so we can get this off the as Mr. Buxton says, a conversation and communication, so we can get moving forth. I have an issue with an industrial type setting in that area because I think our ordinances, when we do ground cover, we can't do over 30%, and this is within almost 100% coverage. So that is another issue on our side we need to look at for our ordinances. So we want to take time and do this right. That's what we're trying to say right now. So, and there's some other things too, but I don't think this is the time or the place to discuss it because I think we need to have DENREC involved with this. So, but I do appreciate what you're saying. Thank you.
Comments? Senator Hanson, I appreciate your time in coming this evening. I believe there was an open invitation to attend the meeting. When's the next one?
We have them every 2 weeks. So they're every 2 weeks. The next, we just had one this past Friday. So it'll be 2 weeks from this next, the 22nd.
It's just a conversation. You guys are having your actual meetings and talks, and the others are kind of like this, paying attention and listening, correct?
Yeah, they're all
sure.
virtual. So the
Okay.
energy stakeholder
There you go.
group meetings are usually on Fridays.
Right.
They're often from 1 to 3. The one on the 22nd is from 10 to 12. I'll send you information. It's all virtual. You can dial in. We usually have about 65 to 85
Great.
people that are there. We have about 20 of the folks that I just mentioned to you that are the panelists on there, but anyone can provide, comments and can be recognized.
I, again, appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I had identified, obviously we have some folks in the audience. I wanted to make sure they knew about it. I know Commissioner Maston reached out to a few of you, and that'll come at the public comments time. For me, those were two of the folks that I wanted to have testified tonight. I don't know if anybody's got anyone else. It would have been nice to have somebody from the utilities speak up, but you want to? There you go. I didn't want to put you on the spot. I know you're retired.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Sure, buddy.
I hope you can hear me pretty good. If this is better, that's good. My name's Bill Andrew. I'm a retired CEO from Delaware Electric Cooperative. I'm an energy advocate, and I'm an energy consultant at this point in time. I spent 44 years trying to keep the lights on in Kent and Sussex County predominantly, but not only keep the lights on with respect to having enough supply and keeping the distribution system, but making sure that it's affordable, okay? The market is changing. We all know, and if we looked at the a report recently, it said that energy prices are going to go up 30% this winter, and there's going to be people who can't afford it. One thing that I'm seeing in the solar markets is that solar energy is coming down, and it's stabilizing the marketplace, where it's not having the shift of power coming up and going down. Right at this point in time, solar is the only game in town in Delaware with respect to renewable energy. People talk about wind energy, and if you think you can bring wind energy in from Ohio and have it here and let it be useful, No, you can't do that. You can put it into the system and other people can use it, as Senator Hansen very accurately described. You know, we don't have enough natural gas to build our own power plants here. It's not big enough pipelines. We've got Indian River Power Plant, which was recently decided that they were going to close it down, and now PJM has indicated that we're not going to close it down. Why? Not necessarily because we can't bring the power in 99% of the time, but we can't keep the voltage and frequency up during the critical times where we really need it. And when we do go out of power, we're going to be out of power for quite some time. When we look at solar energy, it's supplemental. Everybody knows it's supplemental. Okay, all energy is supplemental. There are no silver bullets in our industry. Okay, we have to look at what's best for us. What is providing us clean energy? What is providing us energy where we can use it? And how we can do it in a non-invasive manner. Solar is non-invasive. Okay, they make great neighbors. They don't make a lot of noise. They don't have a lot of traffic. They don't create pollution. They grow a crop every day. Okay? I don't believe that, you know, and I've dealt with a lot of folks with respect to solar, and Delaware Electric Cooperative was one of the first to build one of the first solar in Delaware, utility grade solar, and we've expanded it, and we're looking right now with several other projects because our members need it. Our systems need it. In order for us to keep the lights on and keep the environment clean, Delaware is the lowest area in the United States as far as the state is concerned, and we sit right next to the ocean. So these are all things, all you've got to do is turn on the Weather Channel, read the internet, you find out what we need to do. Solar is not the answer for everything, but right now it's the best answer that we've got. I don't believe, I've talked to a lot of landowners and farmers, I don't believe I've forced anyone into selling their property. I think a lot of people come to us and they say, well, why do you want to sell your property? Well, or why do you want to lease your property? Because we get a good price for it and we can make more money and spend money elsewhere to enhance our farming operations somewhere else in better land or creating better equipment for us to increase our crop production. You know, it's designed, when you look at the design of the solar, it's designed to be non-catastrophic. It's designed so that it stays on. We can incorporate storage now to help it make it a little more sustainable. But you're right, the sun doesn't shine 24/7 and 365. But when it does, it creates energy. And it creates energy at a reasonable price for people to afford today because the cost of solar has come down. I do want to tell you that there's all types of solar. There's rooftop solar, okay? There's solar that goes on chicken houses on your property in much lower. There's community-based solar that Senator Hansen talked about. There's utility-grade solar that's behind the meter. And then there's the large solar farms that you all were talking about that I don't know anything about. But that specific one. But the larger the solar farm is, the cheaper you can build it because there's value in scale. Now, when you look at the different types of solar and placing it on your systems, it not only helps keep the lights on and keeps the voltage up and keeps the frequencies going, but it also allows you to eliminate some of the cost of the transmission lines, of the capacity requirements from PJM. So there's value in that. Solar is not indiscriminately placed. It's very strategically placed within our state, within our county, next to transmission lines, next to distribution lines that can get it out. If you look up the east side, there's two great big transmission lines, 230,000 volts, that can cover many, many, many megawatts worth of electricity, and they're very keen for us to keep our lights on. So when you look at how you place these solar farms, we don't place them everywhere. We place them where they make strategic sense for us from a cost standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, from a reliability standpoint, and from a resiliency standpoint. You know, I've been a part of Kent County for over 35 years. Unfortunately, I've retired and I've moved out of Kent County, but I still have an awful lot of roots in Kent County and an awful lot of roots in Delaware. I've spent an awful lot of time in this business, and you all know me. I've been here many times. You all have a nice solar farm at your wastewater treatment plant that's worked very well for you for many, many years. I have at the cooperative, I encourage the building of solar farms that allowed us to try to meet the renewable portfolio standards. There's going to be a lot of land that's going to be used. I think that you can do it strategically. You can do it designed to accommodate the needs of everybody from a power standpoint, but also from an environmental standpoint. And I just want to let you know that I'm available at any time. I'm the easiest person in the state of Delaware because I gave my cell number out over the TV, and I believe all of you have that. So please feel free to use me as a reference whenever possible. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, we have a couple questions. Commissioner Hall.
Thanks, Commissioner Bucks. Proximity to transmission lines. So what are we talking about? A half mile, a couple of miles that you would want to set a large-scale solar array in order to be economic?
Well, Mr. Hall, there's a lot, Commissioner Hall, there's a lot. The proximity to the transmission lines, it costs an awful lot of money to build a transmission line. I would like to look adjacent to it. When you build a facility that's adjacent to a transmission line, you have to build a ring bus. A ring bus costs you somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million in order to allow you to access the transmission system to get the power in. That takes the power out. When you build it next to a distribution line that might be three-phase 600 amp, capable of 10 megawatts to 25 megawatts worth of power, you can put a portion of it on that. But the portion of the solar that you need to place on that cannot be more than the minimum amount of load on that substation, because the rules of the road under PJM doesn't allow you to put anything back on the line unless they know about it. On the big transmission lines, you have to go through a lot of engineering studies to make sure that they can accommodate that power coming back. And if you can't accommodate that power, they will give you a nice little price tag in order to fix all of the other problems that might occur during that period of time. A lot of folks look, solar is very, very helpful during the peak periods of time. It's really limited during the low periods of time because you can't be placing power back on the transmission system unless you have permission from PJM, which is also very costly. Did that help?
It did. And, just for my fellow commissioners, I asked that question because we came up with a growth zone overlay based on proximity to pumping stations. And so, that zone incorporates just about every type of zoning district that we have. But that was the driver, was physical proximity. And so I'm wondering if part of the deliberations are proximity to transmission lines when we consider solar applications for solar arrays, rather than,
That's typically for the larger units. Even the smaller units, anything from 2 to 6 megawatts, 2 to 7 megawatts, 2 to 10 megawatts, might be able to be placed on the distribution system, okay? The distribution system is the power lines that run up and down the highways that serve power to your home. Typically, they need to be three-phase and they need to be of sufficient voltage and capacity on those lines.
Thanks.
Any other questions? And I appreciate you standing. I didn't want to put you on the spot. I wasn't sure your role tonight. So
I live on the spot. Thank you.
But I will ask you this question.
Okay.
Because it's been asked. It's been asked by some legitimate folks. I use the example of state land. Why not? Why not locate these on state land? For example, the prison in Smyrna. Is it just because policy doesn't drive that? Is it purely economic sense?
That's a great question. And, I just had a conversation today with why don't we put it in highway loops and on state land anywhere that makes common sense for us. But once again, it has to be specific to the system that takes the power away, okay? But putting it on a prison, I don't know what kind of load, but I'm sure it has a lot of load on the prison in Newcastle County. And I'm sure that it would be very wise to do that. Not only the prison, but schools, but you're only talking about little pieces. The community solar projects, what that does, it builds it in a larger group, puts it onto the system, and then disperses it to many, many people through the use of a computer. It's basically a virtual system, which is very similar to that. Your industrial lands where you can place it on industrial property, it's very highly expensive. The state of Delaware, I'm sure, has a lot of lands. And in fact, I've asked the Secretary of Agriculture personally if he could give me any ideas as to where we could locate solar when I was working at the cooperative. So it's great ideas. I think that not only would the utilities like to know that, I'm sure that the solar developers would like to know that too. It could create some revenue for the state, help keep our prices lower, and use a good use of the land.
When one of the commissioners joins in on the Zoom, you can bring that up at the meeting that they'll have in 2 weeks' time. You articulated the one, because one of the things I was going to suggest is the 40% portfolio of renewable energy, but it looks to me like we have 39% of ours is going to be wind farm. If you restricted it to 20%, it would drive the other sectors. Your answer is probably not, because it just doesn't work. Wind farm here doesn't work. That was your
the wind farm in Delaware doesn't work. I mean,
okay.
You've heard a lot of rhetoric about offshore wind. I mean, we have contracted wind to put into PJM all over Western Maryland and Pennsylvania. That's limited too. But you've got to be able to get the power to where you need to use it. And you've got to have the systems available to distribute the power, not only during low load periods of time, but during the high load periods of time, which are even worse. And that's when we really need this help into the system as far as to keep the lights on. I hope I haven't been too technical, but hey, I'm always available.
It's important, and I think it was an effective committee meeting in the sense.
I do want to say that, in my experience in business, I always would look at what's happening in my legislature and what's happening in my county, and I would always engage in that, and you know that. I always engage myself. Many times a little bit pushy. I don't wait to have somebody call me and say, will you do this? A lot of times I'm saying, hey, I want to be here and I want to do this, just like I'm here tonight. Okay?
We appreciate you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, just as a reminder, I think the committee meeting where we sit in front, we invite some folks down to have conversation, is what essentially happened tonight, where we invited a representative of the Farm Bureau, made sure that the farming community, especially in that area, was invited, and they'll speak later. We have someone from the utilities coming in, and of course someone from the state. I thought that was beneficial to the conversation. I think where we need to go now is kind of where we started. We have a decision to make on moratoriums and whether or not that's required at this time. But before we do that, is there some strong ideas on what you would like to see changed in how the county approves solar farming? The biggest problem we obviously have right now is what happened the other night, which is large-scale projects in some of our most sensitive and restricted areas of the county. If your goal is to prevent that, how do you do that? And I think some of it was listed. Would you argue that's a fair question to ask? And I think I'll ask that of Ms. Kiefer to articulate how that might look. Is that a good question to ask? So, Ms. Kiefer, I'm not sure you can answer it all in 1 minute, but...
When you say sensitive areas, are you talking about traditionally environmentally sensitive areas, or are you talking about simply productive farmland?
Yes, I'm not naming it properly. Productive farmland be a quality statement to make, yes.
Okay. If you're talking about, if I'm hearing you correctly, the concern is simply allowing productive farmland to convert to solar. Is that?
It's a tough question to formulate and then to answer, but in simple terms, what we experienced last week before that, was just that we have these large-scale projects on areas of the county that we've identified as, strong cropland, farmland, in areas where those community members, landowners, have already been asked to do a lot, to give a lot when it comes to accepting the county's rules. That's what I'm looking for. In general, simple terms, do we want to restrict this east of Route 1? If you do, that's easy. If you don't, then how do you prevent what happened the other night from happening again without a restriction? Or do you not? You just simply vote no the night of a meeting. That's it.
Just a point of clarification. If you're talking about the productivity level of farmland, that doesn't equate to zoning. If you're just talking about the conversion of farmland, then I would encourage you not to look at east of Route 1. That's not a zone in and of itself we can work with. What we can work with is types of zoning district, right? AC or AR, or industrial, any of them, and inside the growth zone versus outside the growth zone.
Comment, because it's my committee, and if anyone wants to jump up, they can, would be to say yes. That yes, I'd like to see the commissioners, maybe not this evening, but agree to what she just said and then provide thoughts to her tomorrow on what you would like to see so that we could bring it back for a discussion. That's what I think, because I agree with what you said in general terms, but what you said was very broad. Okay, President Pepper.
One of the things that folks have brought to my attention that maybe could be considered is when we're considering doing ag land preservation, we score the land, correct?
We do.
And based on
productivity,
productivity, we score the land. And the higher score gets first dibs at ag land preservation. A lower score doesn't. Is there a way to do it based on that by scoring the land with the lower productivity level would be the first on the list, as opposed to the ones with the highest productivity being the lowest on the list. That way, it kind of evens out makes it fair, because the folks that have land that is on the low end that they can't get it into ag land preservation, it gives them an opportunity to do something with their land that's more productive. So can we look at something like that and kind of tweak it to make it work? I've been asked about that by several people, farmers for one, and farmers that have tried to get into ag land preservation, but have never been successful because of the productivity level of their land. And this would keep the land that is so productive, out of the mix. And most of that land is east of Route 1. Some of the most productive farmland in the county, if not the state. And you take that farmland off of the out of production. We're fixing one problem, creating another. If you take all that good land out of production, you're limiting harvest and you're limiting what we eat. So we can either have the lights on or we can not eat. So I think that's might be something viable to look at. I mean, at least be considered anyhow.
It's actually something we've talked about at the staff level. We don't score the farms, the Department of Agriculture does, and they are scored when they apply for preservation. But I think it would be worthwhile to talk to our friends at the Department of Agriculture to see if we could effectively set a threshold, that below a threshold you're eligible for solar, above a threshold you wouldn't be eligible. It's worth exploring, yes. And
I like the idea of bringing the state in on this and giving them a part in it. sometimes don't always go the other way, but, you know, if we can bring the state in, especially Department of Ag, and let them play a part in this and have a say, I think that would benefit us all. I mean, they are supposed to be the actual experts on farmland.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not exclude them. Let's bring them in.
No, I think that's absolutely worthwhile to explore.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck.
Commissioner Sween and Commissioner Hall.
Thanks, Commissioner Buxton. So, Ms. Kiefer, some of the suggestions that have come from the panel tonight can all be ordinated. Does that require a moratorium for you to get the ordinances done?
No, we don't, as staff, no, we don't need a moratorium to get ordinances done. We write them all the time. The question is the risk of more projects coming in under the current standard.
Right.
I do think, based on some of the calls we've been getting since the ordinance was introduced, I think the pressure might lessen slightly if a moratorium is not on the table, because a lot of people are panicking right now. And people might be willing to sit back and watch and participate in the ordinance development rather than rush to get projects in, is a possibility.
Which gives us the chance to put some type of limitations on what happens, as opposed to if we do a moratorium and you're working on the ordinance changes at the same time, nothing, I mean, we're still 3 months after the adoption of the moratorium, correct?
Yeah, if you're looking at timeline for a moratorium ordinance, that can't get on an agenda until December, just given public hearing requirements. And at the same time, we're developing an ordinance specific to solar arrays. It's depending on how Levy Court determines the direction to go, it's not far behind.
So some of the requests tonight require an ordinance change, but there were options that you listed in the document you provided to us that didn't require, they don't need to be ordinated. They could have been conditions of approval, correct?
Some have been. It's certainly, for all of the solar arrays that have been approved, one of the conditions of approval has been the decommissioning plan and getting an escrow account to fund decommissioning. That appears to be an industry standard. Everyone's agreed to do it. Typically, when it comes to buffering and setbacks, there are existing standards, but applicants have been certainly very open to conditions, to modifying buffers to accommodate adjacent property owners. So that's all stuff that can happen outside of an ordinance. The principal question has been, in what zoning districts, does the Levy Court want to limit the zoning districts solar installations are permitted in? And we can look at specific conditions such as the LISA score, and does that play a role? Those would require an ordinance.
So Senator Hansen, Mr. Wilkins, Mr. Andrews, appreciate you guys coming out tonight to talk to us about all of this. Obviously, we're not all experts on it, but it's good to hear a difference of opinions about solar panels. I didn't want to debate whether solar panels are good or not. I think that they are. I believe in renewable energy. I believe that we need to move in that direction. So I'd rather not see a moratorium, but we'll see how things go. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Buxton. Just to make sure I understand, if we were to approach this by zoning district or in-growth zone, outgrowth zone, that would help us avoid issues of uniformity, so that a farmer outside of Lipsick can sell to ultimately convert to solar field, but someone outside of Harrington can't. And how can we explain that to two different landowners who want to sell because I don't believe in any case anyone is ever forced to sell.
Right.
It's just, do I want to sell, and who can I sell to in terms of the use, intended use. So that is uniformity we need to really be careful of here. Is that true?
Yes, which is why I made the distinction that making it specifically east of Route 1, that's not a zoning district, right? But if you look at the map, you've got the blue line running down the center, that's the growth zone. And then the darker green is the AC zoning district, the lighter green is the AR zoning district. And that's obviously where you're going to see also most of our agricultural land. So those are sort of the constraints without doing some sort of separate overlay zone, which is another rather substantial challenge.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Petitmage.
Hey, Buxton, interesting discussion. A classic land use debate going on here. And I think what I'm hearing are some cogent ideas. I think that a way to look at this, first of all, is how do we square it with our comprehensive plan, which talks about preserving rural character, preserving farmland, preserving areas outside the growth zone for those types of uses, and community character. It talks a lot, there's a whole section on community character, and I think we heard from people who were concerned about that when a utility scale facility comes to a rural area. So it's a classic land use battle or debate here. But I think that a way to approach this is like a classic McCargian, design with nature type of an approach, where you look at various layers of information that are readily available, and if you come up with some standards that are agreed upon, it could help site these facilities in places that may be more appropriate through the deliberative process here, whatever regulation you come up with. But some of the things I'm thinking of are, there are resources out there that you can look at that have been produced by the state of Delaware, like there's a wildlife action plan. We heard a lot about the impacts on wildlife. We know that we have really good mapping on wetland areas. Should there be, minimum offsets from wetlands? There are maps that show us all the protected lands in the county, those that are protected by agricultural easement, those that are protected as natural areas, wildlife areas, things of that nature. Maybe there should be some minimum performance standards, distance offsets from those areas that are already protected, that have been protected by public investment, I'll also add. And then the LISA score, that's another very valid, I believe, tool to use. We use it for magland preservation to value those that are, as President Pepper mentioned, those that are more productive, and they get higher consideration. Well, the same data could be used in a different way. I think the state has spent a fair amount of effort developing something called a green infrastructure plan that also protects resources. Should you consider, minimum setbacks from those kind of areas that are protected, floodplains, source water protection areas, and all those sorts of things. Early on in the discussion, I think Commissioner Angel mentioned lot coverage as a standard. Well, I guess in some way people would say that solar isn't impervious because it doesn't pave the surface. Well, solar panels themselves are impervious. And because of their impervious character, they do cause some concentration of stormwater runoff that changes the hydrology, the natural hydrology that otherwise occurs on a property. So I think some of those things could be taken into consideration also as you consider how to limit the amount of coverage that can occur on a particular property. Also, you could consider offsets from historic resources as well and things of that nature. So I think there's some performance measures that you could consider aside from just what zoning category do these fall in or not fall in, that could be applied through the conditional use process. Some of the things that are listed as conditional uses have a really long list of conditions you must meet to kind of be eligible. Others have a very short list. I think this is an area that, our code currently is silent on, doesn't really deal with utility scale solar. It doesn't even mention solar at all, I don't think, in our zoning code. So I think I'll stop there. I think that there's some things that we can look at beyond just one or two variables. There's probably multiple variables that you can kind of layer on top of each other, and then those areas become out of play, if you understand what I mean. Thank you.
Any other comments by the commissioners? Ms. Kiefer, before I bring this thing to a close, you feel good about some of the things that were discussed tonight and an idea of moving forward, what we want to be looking at?
I think we can definitely put an ordinance together, at least for consideration. The primary question administratively for us, procedurally for us, is are we moving forward with a moratorium?
That's what we can get to next. So we have some marching orders on some things that we can do that I think can have a positive impact, right? I might challenge a request, ask Commissioner Maston maybe to communicate with Ms. Kiefer. I can certainly do it too. I don't want this to just be my plan, but to kind of have the conversation and move it forward so that we can bring something back in a timely fashion if we decide not to do a moratorium, right? Okay. So we agree to that, right? Are there any more quick conversation about giving her a directive, not the moratorium, but directive on some things to bring back? Commissioner Angel.
Thank you. I know our ordinance says public utilities, but should that be broke down? So that was written way before solar was even thought of. So should that be an entity within itself with all our powers that's possibly around? So we have something that if it comes in the future, we're at least covered or have some idea of moving forth?
I would suggest, and probably presumed it was just a given, yes, we will create a specific definition for solar and the different types of solar, right? Because one is a public utility. It is governed by the PSC. It's regulated by the PSC, as opposed to rooftop solar. So I would create definitions to distinguish between all of those. We would address that. Because yes, I mean, our ordinance is 30 years old and solar wasn't a consideration when it was written.
And I just want to go on record too, once more, that we're not against solar, and a lot of us have actually heightened our homework and gone above and beyond. And I know that, Mr. Willard said that about our parking lots. Well, North Carolina Mall has exactly done that. They raised the panels to cover for the vehicles, and they cover their lot with solar panels. So there are people doing things in other states that we could probably look at too. It gives buy us some time. So we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just trying to make it better, as the way I see it. So I just want to throw that out there too. Thank you.
Ms. Kiefer, just because of the audience that we have, I learned tonight, I guess you stated for the record that there's an application coming back. It's the one that we voted on or dealt with a couple weeks ago?
In September.
Why
yes.
is that? How is that?
There's no prohibition on resubmission. The only prohibition on resubmission has to do with a rezoning application. For a land development regulation or land development application, there's no prohibition.
Get denied. Next time, come back 2 weeks later, get denied. And wow. All right, enough of that one. So we've got some marching orders, scoring the land, communication with the state, as Commissioner Pepper articulated, following and looking at the comprehensive plan and some of the things that Mr. Pettit-Damage, Commissioner Sweeney presented. I would like to say on the opposite side of things, make sure we do our best to be balanced, right? We have to stay focused on the rights of property owners within reason to engage and sell their land. We don't want to go so far one direction that we have a negative consequence. We have to be wary of that. And in fairness to the state and their initiative, some of the things we're throwing out, the margin, I would suspect, for profitability in the county from some of the industry, although great right now, if you start to chew it up, you could go in the opposite direction, which I know some of the crowd might be very happy with if they don't have a belief in the solar farm, and we're not here to discuss that. I get that. So when you're doing your deliberations, looking to make some changes, make sure we have a little balance there as best we can. Anyway, if that's it, I'm going to close the hearing. One more, and then we're going to open up for public comments. Sure.
We haven't heard from Commissioner Howe. You might want to check with him.
Commissioner Howe, my friend, are you in the house? Are you good? 3, 2,
If you
1.
muted your phone, press *6.
I'm there. I got it.
So he's good to go. So I think we're
I'm
good.
as talking as ever.
Yeah, we're good. So there's really nothing other than what we just stated, so there's nothing to vote on. I'm going to close the hearing now and open it up for public comments. That's okay. So I thank you for your time, everybody. At this time, would we start in the audience and work our way to the phones? Is that? I think we had a switch last week. Okay. So I'm closing the hearing, inviting someone to come down that would like to, if anybody would like to come down to the podium and make brief comments.
And point of clarification, this was not a hearing, but it's just a discussion.
Committee. Discussion, yes. Feel free.
Hello. For the record, my name is Vincent Mashallah. I work with ECA Solar. We've been fortunate enough to work in the state since before Senator Hansen's bill was signed into law. And
Sir, could you pull that microphone up to your mouth, please?
yeah, of course.
There you
better.
go. There you
All
go.
right.
And please repeat your first name. It was kind of muffled.
Yep. Vincent Moshella with ECA Solar. First, I'd like to thank all the commissioners for putting this meeting together. Certainly, I've learned a lot from hearing everyone that has spoken tonight, and I think there's a lot more that we can all learn from having this dialogue. It's certainly healthy discussion, and the more people that are involved, I think the better. I've personally developed solar in about 6 different states across the United States. I've seen examples of good policies. I've seen examples of bad policies, and you know, the state that our company is based in, Massachusetts, I'd say has now gone what I would consider the full cycle of solar development, having started about 10 years ago. So I've seen it end up on parking lots. I've seen it, I've personally put it on parking lots. I've personally put it on parking garages. I can say that as programs develop, that is the natural progression. You will get there, but it is the most expensive way of installing solar. It costs 6 to 8 cents per kilowatt hour extra, which is about the entire cost of what you're paying for electricity right now. So it is something that is paid for as an amenity. It is far from something that is saving energy, and those costs come from the steel and the foundations. But to take a couple of steps back, I came here tonight with a list of comments prepared that I wanted to make on behalf of some of the landowners that we've been working with that couldn't be represented tonight but would like to speak next week. I've decided to save those comments for them. I think it's best that they be made in the public hearing on their behalf. Similarly, to make comments on behalf of the low to moderate income community that we've been working with as a part of Senator Hansen's bill. I'm not sure if you're aware, but it's a requirement to participate in Senator Hansen's SB2 that 15% of the output of our solar generator be applied to low to moderate income community members at a discount to provide equal access to them. So, next week I'd like some of them to speak and for you to hear about why this would be important to them and how a moratorium would hurt them as an underserved community. I'd like to focus my comments on some of what I heard tonight. Primarily, is a moratorium necessary, or is this something that can be done through an ordinance over time? To address that directly, I'd like to state that even though SB2 was signed into law by the governor, I think the reason that the county was not involved in the law being signed and created is because it was intentionally very short. If you look at the bill, it's only a few pages. And the crux of the bill is that by March of 2022, the PSC must release rules. Those rules will govern how I can build solar. They may include where I can build solar. They can include setbacks from wetlands. They can include any restrictions that anyone in this room would like to see. That stakeholder process is what Senator Hansen is discussing happens every other Friday, with one happening this Friday. So I'd encourage anyone that wants to become a part of that rulemaking process that comes into place in March of 2022 to get involved. A lot of the applications that you're seeing are speculative at this point. They're people that are guessing at what the rules are going to be. They may find out in March that their guess was wrong, and the project that they put before Kent County to be built is not in compliance, and therefore they won't be allowed in. And you'll see attrition through that project. Another thing that I wanted to mention, in the growth zone versus no growth zone, part of Senator Hansen's bill is a requirement that the project be located in Delmarva Power and Light. I can tell you, I'm not a perfect expert. I know Bill would be more suited to answer this than I am because he built DEC's or a lot of DEC's grid, but almost the entirety of Delmarva sits within that growth zone. So if there were a restriction put in place that limited solar within the growth zone, there would be a restriction for Senator Hansen's bill, SB2, effectively eliminating community solar in the county and its benefits for low-income stakeholders. If you're restricting it outside, well, that's within DEC's territory, and as Bill had mentioned, those projects are basically placed by DEC in places that DEC wants them, in places that it's beneficial for those ratepayers. Now, the project that was rejected 2 weeks ago and apparently is reapplying is a utility scale solar project. It's 500 acres, similar to the one in Harrington that was about 300 acres. They're very different from what Senator Hansen is proposing. The projects that we seek to build are 20 acres, 30 acres, 50 acres being sort of the biggest ones if the grid will allow it. But going back to my earlier point of attrition that I think you'll see between now and March of 2022, which will be here before any of us know it, comes back to Delmarva Power and Light and their ability to accept this power, as Bill had mentioned. We cannot put more power onto the grid than the minimum load in that area. So if you're looking east of Route 1 in a lot of those areas where they are truly most rural, and you exclude the utility scale projects like the one that was recently rejected, and you look just at the community scale ones attaching to the distribution network, we are restricted by FERC, who's the federal regulator, PJM, who's the regional regulator, and Delmarva Power and Light, that we cannot export more than what is being used in the local community. So I think that there's a natural limitation put in place by those rules that limit how much solar you'll see in those areas. So the county may see a lot of applications, but I can tell you, having seen this cycle run through many times, that they are limited by the utility. Now, where those limitations are sort of lifted is within the growth zone. But as someone that's out there buying property, leasing property, I can tell you that's where I'm competing with the housing market for land prices. I can't, toe to toe, the housing market will beat, a solar system every single time. So that's a further layer of attrition. There's only so many places that we can go, and we have to be in the right spot from an electrical connection perspective. So I think, if you let this process sort of play its natural progression between now and March of 22, and everyone sort of get involved in the rulemaking, I think you'll see, a program that is well thought out, well developed, and a lot of people's fears in this room will be sort of subdued. With that, I think I'll sort of leave it there. I know that next week is more of a forum for debate, but I just wanted to make some of those clarifying points.
A point of clarification. Because the moratorium was not brought up for consideration, by default, it does not move forward. The purpose for it not moving forward is because of what was described at the beginning of the meeting, which is this push, this throttling up of applications due to the moratorium, which we can't get approved for, I think it was 3 months from now. So I thought it would do more harm than good. What I think we can do good is to change our laws, I don't want to call it laws, somebody's going to call me on that, our codes, our application process, where we look for it to go. We can do that without such a hostile attempt as a moratorium. So while I supported a moratorium, the problem was the moratorium, I believe, was going to be introduced at last week's Levy Court meeting. That was the intent. It was on the agenda to be introduced for a public hearing, I guess essentially could have been tonight. We were informed that through case law, I'll use that the moratorium actually has to go through the RPC. That's what caused the delay. That's what caused the moratorium to lose its effectiveness. So I don't want to cause greater harm than good. That's why we ended up not moving on that. So when you mention next week, that's where you are. If you have representatives from landowners who are interested in solar farming, if you wouldn't mind asking them to present their information, we'd love to hear from them. Certainly the same way we're going to love to hear from some folks in the audience. All right?
Thank you.
Hi, guys. I'm Tricia Hurd-Nash, as you all probably remember. I'm part of a fourth-generation farm family here in Kent County that currently my 26-year-old son is running. So, to Mr. Mullins' point earlier, I understand the difficulty of being a young person and trying to take over farming and get involved and rent land and outbid people and keep things going. Our family currently owns approximately 1,000 acres of land on the east side of SR1, near Bombay Hook Wildlife Refuge and the Woodland Beach Wildlife Area. And I'm here tonight to express my concerns regarding the use of land zoned for agricultural conservation by solar companies for large-scale solar complexes. I'm not really worried about the small stuff, but this thing that we proposed a few weeks ago was crazy. And to planning and zoning's point, they gave them complete passes on setbacks, waterways, tree planting. I mean, they didn't do anything to protect us in that deal. And that was a huge red flag and a huge concern to all of us. That east side of SR1, even though it's harvest season, is fairly well represented in this room tonight. I'm here, Cartanzas are here, Carrie's farm family is here, Wilsons are here, I know that Goldsboroughs are here. I mean, that area is here tonight, even though we're all in the field and we're all working. So just so you know, you have our support. in stopping large-scale solar in that area, whatever it takes. We gave up so much of our land value years ago to protect that area, and I need people to understand this because I get a lot of crap about, well, you got paid for your land rights. You got ag land preservation. Well, no, we didn't all do that. There's a lot of us in this room that didn't take all that money. But then this zoning came in for agricultural conservation. And if you click on our farms on those maps, a lot of them have this neat little notation that says AP/10, which means that you can only put a house for every 10 acres of land. So I'm talking about really restricting land values and us letting that go through because of our quality of life and what we believed in. So people need to understand that we did that. And Mr. McGinnis was here the last time I was here, and he really sort of drove me nuts. He just did some evaluations on our property to close out an estate. And one of the lines in the evaluations for our farms was, the values may not be what you think they should be because you're in an ag land conservation district. Okay, well, I'm willing to accept that. I'm in ag conservation, right? One of my farms was a mile, not even a mile, from that big 580-acre solar complex. He knew about that. Why isn't my land worth that? He never mentioned it in those estimates he gave. Isn't that interesting? So as I sat in this audience that night, I was like just a little less than happy. But I'm going to go ahead and I've done my homework. I'm going to read to you what I've got. I'll answer questions if you have any. According to the Kent County Code, Section 205-44, AC or agricultural conservation zoning is in place, quote, to provide for a wide range of agricultural and farm-related services while providing for low-density residential development in areas where farming may not be the optimum land use activity. I'm unaware of a piece of farmland in our AC district that is not already being farmed, and if there were land not suitable for farming, I fail to see how a large-scale solar development constitutes low-density residential use. In preparation for the 2018 Kent County Comprehensive Plan, there were several surveys completed. When asked, what do you consider the biggest threat to Kent County, 26.15% of participants answered loss of farmland. In Chapter 5, Conservation, the question was asked, what do you think the county's top priority should be in terms of open space and resource protection? 33.77% of participants in source survey number 2 answered preservation of farmland, which was the most popular response. Quoting the comprehensive plan, agricultural preservation is not simply an issue of preserving open spaces or the rural character of Kent County. Rather, it is an issue of protecting a major economic force in both the county and the state. According to the Delaware Department of Agriculture, the agricultural industry in Delaware provides more jobs and impacts the state's economy more than any other sector. I'm concerned by the number of landowners in our area who have been made offers by solar developers. After I spoke at the last public hearing, I was contacted by dozens and dozens of people who thanked me for speaking out. Just in the last week, I've also been contacted by 4 different landowners who have recently received offers from solar developers that are, in their words, too good to be true. Sitting here tonight, Ms. Burrows told me that she received 2 letters this week. So, just so you know, they're coming. One of the biggest questions this raises is, why are solar companies willing to pay more to rent or lease land than it would cost them to buy it outright? It doesn't make common sense. The only reasonable answer I have found is that solar developers recognize the risk involved and or damage to the property and choose to walk away as a way to avoid liability. When presented with development contracts, the typical landowner is unaware of the complexity of the issue. We see dollar signs, not risk. As stewards of the land and the agricultural industry in Delaware, we have a responsibility to restrict and suspend these deals until we have a full understanding of the potential impacts. I've also compiled a list of other concerns which are as follows. At the last public hearing I attended, the solar company agreed to return the farmland to farming condition at the end of its use as a solar farm. They also testified that reclaiming farmland is not something they have ever actually done. Before we allow the use of land zoned for agricultural conservation, shouldn't we be asking if restoration is actually possible? And at the very least, be presented with an example of successful farmland restoration following the removal of all solar infrastructure. Many solar development proposals require funds for cleanup and restoration at the conclusion of the lease period to be set aside. If it's never been done, how can we properly estimate what cleanup costs will be? And even if properly estimated, what happens to those funds if the company files bankruptcy before the lease is ended, as has happened multiple times with other solar fields? There is already land available to expand existing solar companies in Kent County, such as White Oak Road facility, which has already indicated plans for growth in the coming year. Why are we allowing conditional use permits for more land zoned under agricultural conservation to be developed in Kent County when existing solar fields can be expanded? Again, referring to the 2018 comprehensive plan, the Office of State Planning Coordination identified 1,882 acres of vacant land zoned for commercial or industrial use, and an additional 593 acres of commercial or industrial land that was only partially built out. Why not use this land for solar development rather than taking land out of farm production in a zone specifically marked for agricultural conservation? The comprehensive plan also brought up the Delaware Birding Trail and Bombay Hook National Wildlife Refuge and the important role they play in Kent County. The properties in the agricultural conservation zone on the east side of the SR1 corridor are directly in the Atlantic Flyway. The Atlantic Flyway is one of 4 main paths for migratory birds over the continental United States. Bombay Hook Wildlife Refuge is cited by the National Audubon Society as one of the most frequented and important sites along the Flyway. The impact of solar fields on migratory birds in our area specifically is unknown, but solar fields in general have proven detrimental in areas of wildlife settlement and migration. If any part of our area, which falls under the vital Atlantic Flyway, is to be used for solar, it strikes me as woefully irresponsible to do so until proper studies on the potential impact of development have been conducted and made publicly available. At the last meeting, the representative for the solar company was asked about safety measures for monitoring the fields while no workers were present. He responded that, quote, everyone these days has a Ring doorbell, cameras could be installed and monitored. What it seems many people here fail to realize is that our area's infrastructure cannot readily support projects of this kind. In addition to the roads already being too narrow to accommodate large farm equipment, at the same time as other traffic, we have no internet service of any kind. We don't have Ring doorbells because they do not work. What internet service we do have is via broadband or satellite connection, which is unreliable and heavily limited. Mine can barely run a home business, and I doubt live video feeds would ever be possible, not to mention whatever other similar needs would exist to properly manage a solar field. We also frequently have issues with cell service and bad telephone landlines. A point was raised at the previous hearing that landowners in the area would be opposed to any kind of development, which is untrue. Part of our opposition to solar development is that large solar fields have been shown to decrease land values. Our area is very limited by zoning for housing development. Some areas are limited to 1 house every 4 acres. Others are limited to 1 house every 10 acres, AP10. The homes that are normally built in our area increase surrounding land value, and so for myself and others would not be an issue under current zoning. I'd like to make clear I'm not against solar energy or other forms of clean and renewable energy. I am against using land zoned under agricultural conservation for solar development. Farmland is too precious of a resource and increasingly scarce in our county. I'm asking Levy Court to place a hold on these conditional use permits until relevant studies on viability and environmental impact can be completed by third-party experts and are made public. The potential risks are too great to move forward without certainty. I do not believe a single piece of land zoned for agricultural conservation should be provisionally developed for solar or any other non-agricultural use until we know for a fact that it can be returned to viable farmland. And, you know, I mentioned this before. I've done work. I do work for some of the solar companies. I went back and I looked at one of the companies that I've done work for since 2000. I started around 2016. They've been through 3 buyouts. since 2016. I'm not going to publicly throw myself under the bus, but it's local. And they've been through 3 buyouts. What happens to these people? One of the people that contacted me is from Hartley. I don't really care if you put a large solar development in Hartley. That's just my own opinion, but the poor woman asked me what my concerns were with solar, and I said, well, part of my concerns are what do we do with it when it's time to clean it up? And her answer, as someone that is thinking about doing this, was, well, can't you just take them to the Sandtown dump? People are unaware of what they're getting into. People are unprepared to deal with these contracts. People are getting these things. I don't care what anybody tells you, landowners that own land are getting these things like junk mail. And then, if you don't respond, you get a real nice packet in the mail that looks like an actual contract, which I don't know if it's real or not. We threw ours out. But people are getting these things every day. I don't know what it is about our area. I think it's the ease. The other problem is it was created by the county. Our land is cheaper to buy because it can't be developed. It's that agricultural conservation district, so it's cheaper to buy. So they're coming in and they're going to swoop it up. But they're not going to do it on the east side of Route 1. We're not going to let it happen. So, I mean, I don't know what we're going to have to do, but I promise you, we are all here. There will be more of us. Everybody's in the field right now, but I think I'm getting thrown under the bus here, but I'm telling you, we need to protect that area. That entire bright green blob up there that you guys are looking at, I have spent the last 3 days looking at. There is plenty of land in the state of Delaware. Your comprehensive plan calls it out. It's zoned industrial. They're looking for a way to use it. 1,882 acres. Utilize it. Put it on top of buildings. Put it at the Dover Mall. Do whatever you want to do with it. But for goodness sake, that area of farmland is the best that you have in Kent County, Delaware. It's the highest producing farmland there is. Don't let this happen. We almost can't afford now. I mean, buying a farm out there is like, you better know about it ahead of time, you better get there fast, or the prices are crazy and everybody knows it, sits back and goes, well, we'll just wait a little while and they'll come down. But this stuff is just unbelievable at the rate that people are being made offers. And they are offering for rent or lease what they could buy land somewhere else for. It doesn't even make sense. I mean, I understand the draw to it. And it's like I said in the last meeting, the problem is that you have people like me and my sister that are going to protect our land. It's not going to matter what you offer us. It's not going to happen. It's going to divide families. There's going to be somebody in every family that's going to go, well, I want the quick cash. Let me have it. And then you're going to have families like the Cartanzas had one person that wanted to sell to solar. They had to stop it within the family. But we need to be really careful. And there also, something else I've figured out is there needs to be a resource for these people that are getting these offers so that they understand what they're looking at and they understand what they're doing. Because I don't think that exists right now in the county or in the state. I don't think they have anywhere to turn. So I think that needs to be a part of what you look at as well. Because it's like the question I got the other night, well, can't you just put them in the Sandtown dump? I don't think people realize what they're looking at. So that's it. If you guys have any questions for me, I mean, what?
Thanks.
I'll answer.
I'm not getting my tail kicked.
Thanks, Tricia, for a job well done.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Dustin Thompson. I'm one of the 2 staffers at the Sierra Club Delaware chapter. I wanted to make comments tonight, particularly since we won't be, I guess we won't be meeting on the 26th to have comments then. I just want to address a couple things that have been brought up tonight. I do have to agree with Mr. Bill Andrews here and with the gentleman from the solar company that generally nobody's really forced to give up their land. And I would also point out that leasing is popular because these are, in the grand scheme of things, short-term assets. And so leasing makes a lot more sense than buying. If you're building housing that's going to be there for, well, my house has been up for almost 100 years now, then obviously purchasing land makes a lot more sense. But if something's, the 20 to 30-year lifespan, leasing makes a lot more sense. And you have seen in other states like Minnesota that have very strong community solar programs and solar in general, a very good cohabitation between agriculture and the solar industry. And leasing is the most popular relationship that they have. So you do have a lot of examples of agricultural land being returned to productive ag resources after the lease has expired. And decommission is pretty much an industry standard. So what do you do with the panels? That's not on the landowner, that's on the company that owns the asset. And while companies may get bought out over time in that 20-year span, the contracts do extend to the next owner, and they're on the hook for the decommission plan as well. And generally, that's part of the contract that the landowner is going to sign. So just a couple things there. What Kent County does ultimately in this decision of how we're going to allow solar to continue to move forward or not will impact the rest of the state substantially. Regardless of other externalities, the economics and infrastructure make a huge impact on where solar is going to be sited, whether that's in Kent County, Newcastle, Sussex, what have you. But certainly Kent County does have a lot of opportunity for solar, particularly the community solar. I'm not going to speak to the mega project that you guys, that targeted this conversation. But in terms of community solar, where you're talking about that 30-acre or less size, there's substantial resources in both Kent and Sussex County, or Kent and Newcastle County, because of the property that resides within the Delmarva Power and Light territory. So I would say that it would be very beneficial to have a wide array of folks that are very knowledgeable in the development of solar, both in the beginning stages and the end stages of solar development, end stages being the decommissioning, to be at the table when we talk about how we can move forward with solar development in Kent County. Certainly that's the approach that Senator Hansen took when drafting the policy itself. That's the approach the Public Service Commission has been taking in drafting the rules and regulations, which the comments are due on November 1st. So I would highly suggest that, and I'd be happy to forward the draft over, the link to the draft, so you can review it. But if you do have comments, I would definitely suggest getting those in before November 1st. Won't be your last opportunity, but certainly your first and best. At the Sierra Club, we certainly want responsible solar development. And we want responsible development, generally speaking. We don't want a housing development or a solar development to tear down, an old growth forest, right, to impact wetlands or negatively impact ecology. I think we want the same things. We want solar to be done responsibly, just as we want housing to be done responsibly, because we've seen the negative impact of housing being done irresponsibly in the state of Delaware. And that's a struggle I think every county is having to come to deal with as our population grows. The concerns have just been in some of the thoughts and information that we've heard being articulated on solar technology itself. Just as by way of an example, we've heard about solar panels leaking lead and then rendering the ag land useless afterwards. There are no liquid components to solar panels. They don't leak unless they're under enormous amounts of heat. So those types of things, we're just concerned, because if that's driving the conversation and the thought processes, those kind of misconceptions of the industry and the technology, what could then be the end result of that? So having folks, we have some resources from the University of Delaware as well that has a lot of information on a lot of the concerns that we've heard. over the years, and particularly over the past week or so, on solar development and solar technology itself. And example of decommissioning, recycling panels, what happens to the panels after they're done being used. A lot of them do not go into landfill. They still produce at 80 to 90% efficiency, so they're often used in other projects and sold at a discounted rate. And so there are a number of resources to be happy to help connect you all with as this conversation moves forward. Of course, we'd be happy to participate in that conversation as well to make sure we do solar in a beneficial, economically, a beneficial ecologically, and environmentally, as well as for those that are around the facilities as well. So that was it. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
Good evening. My name is Matt Hartigan. I am the Executive Director of the Public Service Commission. I'm also in Commissioner Hall's district. So wanted to speak from a professional and personal perspective tonight. There's been a couple references to the Commission's regulation. The proposed regulations were published October 1st. Staff feels that the regulations are fairly close to what the final version will be. Obviously, as Mr. Thompson referenced, comments are open until the end of the month. But our regulations have nothing to do with land use. We're not trying to usurp your authority. They're really concerned with certifying these companies and making sure that they are legitimate, and also implementing some customer protections, as Senator Hansen mentioned. So certainly welcome your comments on that. You can feel free to contact me if you have any questions. From a personal perspective, I was here for the meeting on the 28th, and living in Commissioner Hall's district, I mean, we don't really have a dog in the fight, but clearly there appears to be a disconnect between some of your constituents and the current code. So I'm glad you guys are looking at this. It's a very difficult decision. I don't envy the decision you have to make. I think, you know, on one hand there is landowner rights, but on the other hand there's a very vocal, I don't know if it's a minority or majority, a very vocal group who wants nothing to do with these projects. So not sure where you guys come out at the end, but I am glad you're looking at it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Nichols. I'm a native Delawarean, and I'm an advocate for reliable, and affordable electricity. I am opposed to alternative energy. I seem to be the only person in the room that's opposed to it, but I am. And the reason I'm opposed to it is because you cannot run an industrial society on renewable energy. It's an impossibility. It's intermittent, and therefore it's unreliable. From solar, without any battery backup, the best you can expect is about 20% of what's referred to as nameplate capacity. I looked at the natural gas generation, where would that be, to the east of Route 13. That's a combined cycle natural gas generator. It sits on 145 acres. Adjacent to that is the so-called Dover Solar Park. I don't see anything park-like or farm-like about industrial solar projects, but let's use Madison Avenue's terminology. That sits, as I said, on 105 acres at 20% capacity for 10 megawatts. 20% capacity for 10 megawatts of power on approximately 100 acres of land versus 72% capacity. That's dispatch, how often it's put into service for the natural gas generator on approximately the same amount of land. Now think about that for just a minute. Why would anyone, without a mandate, choose to have a generator that provided electricity for only 20% of the time for a 10 megawatt project compared to a 325 megawatt project that generates electricity 72% of the time? Please, anyone, tell me why. There is no logical reason except for mandates. Now, I was in the meetings with Senator Hansen's predecessor, that would be Senator McBride, and if you think that the 40% mandate for for renewable energy by 2035 is the end of it, it's not. And the 10% for solar, 40% wind, and 30% wind, and 10% solar, it's not the end, it's the beginning. The advocates in that room, which would include the Sierra Club, which wants to eliminate all fossil fuels, 100%, as does the current administration, they argued for 100%. Now, Casio, which operates the grid in California, has the most aggressive, to my knowledge, alternative energy program in the United States. Are you aware that they have to pay people to not dispatch electricity during certain times of the day? The way it works is California has so much solar that they can't feed it all into the grid. They've been trying to deal with it for years. So they try to send it away, export it to other areas. But the problem arises is that in the spring, when they don't need that much energy as generated by electricity as generated by solar, they have to get rid of it some way, as best they can, paying people in some instances. But in the summertime, you would think that all of this excess electricity would then be available to meet the needs. But it's not. And the reason it's not is because California is doing away with reliable generation. So if you don't have the reliable generation to tend the intermittency of solar, you're going to have what California is experiencing right now, and that is brownouts and blackouts. They have to do it, otherwise they risk catastrophic grid failure. Supply and demand have to be kept in balance. So yes, I am opposed to energy sources that do not add to capacity. All they do is temporarily displace reliable generation. That's it. Temporarily displace. They don't replace it. You still need the reliable generation. You can't get away from it. It's necessary. Now, it used to be that Delaware got some of its electricity from coal, but for the most part, we've shut down our coal generation except for the small amount of dispatch that still occurs in Millsboro, and that's only to account for frequency and voltage regulations. Now, why is that? I don't know. Former President Andrews would be able to better answer that question than me. But I think it might have something to do with balancing the intermittency associated with feeding all this solar. I don't know. I'm just speculating. All I know is it's not getting dispatched. And the owner wanted to close that plant because it's not economical to run it for such a small amount of time. It doesn't run very often. But PJM, I believe it was PJM, wouldn't let them do it because it would threaten the integrity of the grid. You know, getting back to what I said, you cannot run an industrial society on intermittent electricity. You simply can't do it. These projects that are being proposed are industrial projects. They need to be addressed as such. If we're going to do it, let's do it right. Let's look at material safety data sheets for every aspect of the project. I want to know what the raw materials are. I want to know where they're sourced from. I want to know what the intermediate products are. I want to know what any byproducts. I want to know what the final product is. I want to know the disposition of the decommissioned solar panels. I want to know where they're going. I want to know that the bonding agent has sufficient resources to make certain that no matter what happens under any set of circumstances, that I, as a ratepayer, am not going to, whether it be as a resident of the county or state of Delaware, I'm not going to get stuck with a bill. I think I have a right to know that. We need to look at the environmental aspects associated with these panels, too. I'm just a very informed citizen. I'm not an expert. I expect to be wrong sometimes. I think we're all wrong sometimes. But my reading says that some of the materials in these solar panels should be treated as hazardous waste. And I do know that some municipalities and other jurisdictions have decided to treat it as hazardous waste and require that when these panels are decommissioned, they are required to be manifests have to be issued with them that allows them to be transported intrastate and interstate to a hazardous waste treatment center and then disposed of properly, as all hazardous waste is disposed of. So I would also caution you, I was talking to the representative from one of the solar company that was here this evening, and he explained to me that 85% of the silicone is sourced from China. While some of these panels may be assembled here in the United States, much of the materials comes from China, communist China, who have more than sufficient reason to be less than forthcoming about what they tell us about what goes into those products. My recommendation would be that an independent third-party analysis be conducted of any information that comes from any purveyor of solar panels, especially if that information comes from communist China. I wouldn't trust them. I don't see that being done. Environmental assessments. What environmental assessments are being done? What impact does it have on the natural environment? We've got a great test case out in the Dover Solar Park. That's been there for 10 years. Why don't we just go dig up some soil? Why don't we look and see if anything has dripped off of those solar panels, if they've been damaged by hail? The solar interests assure us there are no problems, so I'm sure that the solar park owners wouldn't have any objection to allowing us to go out there and dig up some soil under each and every one of those panels. Now, that's a real environmental assessment. I don't want to hear what's going to happen in 20 years. We can look at in the past and see what's happened 10 years ago. It's easy to do. I do know that there's only one company that has a recycling program now, and landfill disposal, I suppose if you can get a landfill to take it, runs $1 to $2 per ton. To recycle it costs $20 to $30 a ton. How they recycle it, I don't know, but it costs a lot more. So if you're a business interest and you're looking at $1 to $2 a ton in a landfill versus $20 to $30 to recycle it, there's economic incentive to maybe fudge a little bit, which gets back to the bonding and the need to make certain that we're properly accounting for cradle to grave these solar panels. Let me tell you a story. I was at the University of Delaware at a open symposium, and a physicist was speaking about the topics that we're discussing this evening. People like stories, so I'll tell you one. And I said to him, "Doctor, name doesn't matter, this doesn't add to capacity. Capacity being defined as the ability to meet demand. Again, it just temporarily displaces reliable generation." He said, "You're right. University of Delaware physics professor told me I was right, so contradict me if you want, but you're really contradicting him." And he said to me, "What do you think the solution is then, John?" And I said, "Well, it seems to me at this point it would be natural gas as a bridge to nuclear energy." And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, then I don't know what the answer is. What is the answer?" And he said, and I quote, "Open a window." Now, he didn't mean his window, he meant my window. He was going to continue to enjoy the cool air conditioning of that office in which we met, all the amenities associated with it. And if I couldn't afford the electricity, the solution was open a window. These people are elitists. Elitists. He threatened me, open a window. I don't want to open a window. I'm old enough to have remembered in Kent County being so hot in the summer that I slept on the floor as a child because air conditioning at that time was not widely available. I like air conditioning. I like being in this air-conditioned building. I don't want to go back to sleeping on the floor. You shouldn't either. But that's where we're headed if we don't reverse course. Now, you are in a very enviable position because, as Senator Hansen explained, and you know, you were not brought into the decision-making process, as were stakeholders that have far more interest in this outcome than do I. I'm just a lowly ratepayer trying to pay the bills every month. I'm not a landowner, a large landowner. But they should have been consulted, and they weren't. Maybe some of the concerns that they had would have been inconvenient. But finally, here they are. They're getting an opportunity to express themselves. You should heed them. Let me leave you with one last story that I only recently became aware of because it started in 2014 and I thought it was dead. There is a project that is going on right now in the UK. They have so much intermittent electricity, primarily wind, but some solar, that they're having trouble keeping the lights on. And they still don't want to have nuclear, and they still don't want to use natural gas because God knows we're going to turn the planet to a cinder. So what are they doing? This is insanity. This is what I want to leave you with, where we're headed. It's total insanity. They are constructing a 3,000-mile transmission line that runs from Morocco all the way to the UK. They're going to put a redundant transmission line, not just one, but multiple transmission lines in case something were to fail, so that they can provide baseload electricity using solar. Well, I explained you can't do it here currently, a little bit with battery backup. So what they're doing in the Sahara Desert, which is its own ecosystem, I might add, and the Sierra Club and other organizations should be concerned about what happens in the Sierra as much as what happens in my backyard. Anyways, they're going to put them in the solar panels in the Sierra Desert, and they've learned that at night, because the sun gets so hot, it's going to generate activity of the wind so that it turns turbines. So you get solar in the day, you get wind at night, and you get battery backup too. It still needs batteries, all right? So you're going to get batteries. You're going to have battery backups in Morocco to provide electricity in the UK. It's insanity. What do you think that's going to cost? And I talked to a lefty, wonderful friend of mine. I love him to death. We're buddies. He's an engineer. We disagree on most things, but he's a great resource. And I said to him, what do you think that's going to do to the cost of electricity? He said, well, it'll get expensive, like it is in California, 50 cents a kilowatt hour. You want to pay 50 cents a kilowatt hour for your electricity? I don't. 50 cents. He said it would be unaffordable. He said it would be expensive. I said, no, it won't be expensive. It will be unaffordable. You're going to force people into energy poverty. Let me leave you with one last thought. I have to do this, although my friend, when I was discussing my comments, said, don't go there. But I'm going to go there. The people, the ideologues behind this, really are anti-human. They are. They believe, and he said, don't do it because you can't wake a mind up that quickly. But I'm going to try. You're going to hear it. They're anti-human. How else could you take a policy, put policies in place, in California, for example, where it's 50 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity, or you're going to impose energy poverty on the citizens of the UK and not consider that anti-human? It is. The goal is to reduce the population on the earth because they believe, the pure ideologues, that there are too many people on the planet, when in reality, it's affluence that limits population. I just wanted to give you this framework as to what motivates all this. I've been doing this for over a decade. I don't want to be doing this any longer. This, hopefully, if you vote for the moratorium, I would very much like to be a part of a working committee. I'd like to help you, give you insights that you may not be aware of. I'm sure it'll be robust, spirited discussion. I'd like to be a party of it. Thank you for indulging me this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Hi there, I'm Donald Goldsboro. I own a farm. Most of you are probably aware when we were here on the 28th and it came up to vote, I believe we narrowly averted a disaster. If anybody would see that property and see my property across from it, and I've also often heard of people who've been through a disaster and the community just came out and supported them. I can't tell you how much support I've had, just people stopping by, thanking me, I'm thanking them, waving. No neighbors now, I didn't know. It would have been a disaster had that been approved. And I kind of understand where both sides are coming from. I'm definitely glad that we stopped it for now. But I'm not getting the notices in the mail like some people are. I think a little memo must have gone out that please don't bother that Mr. Goldsboro, because you're wasting your time and your breath. He's not going to sell the solar. I'm never going to do that. I'm convinced of that. On the other hand, I mean, I do see a possibility if I ever ran into a financial crunch. I don't see that right now, but I would like to sell under agricultural conservation guidelines. I might like to have my granddaughter build a house along the road there, but I wouldn't do it if there was a solar farm across the street from me. And I've talked to my neighbors, and if they just sound like if that solar, I don't like to call it farm, industrial complex would go in, I mean, they just were beside themselves. They just wouldn't want to live next to it. We had a lot that my father left a man in his will that worked for him for a lot of years. Sold across the street from us a few years ago, 1 acre, sold for $90,000. So if I was able to sell 4 or 5 acre lots along my road, I could probably raise $500,000 or so just from that. But from talking to my neighbors and me, anybody who's seen like White Oak Park, nobody wants to live across from that. So like when Mr. Buxton, I appreciate a lot of what you said and all, but when you say that, like, we got to be careful. We don't disturb like the business relationship between a property owner and a person who wants to sell. And I understand that. I'm certainly not a communist. I'm for a free market, but also consider that I would not be able to sell, which right now, under the conservation guidelines, I could sell some lots along Lighthouse Road, and I would not be able to. I just know the market would not exist for people wanting to live directly across from solar panels, inverters, things like that. So just selling to the solar farm, it's not as plain as that. I mean, my property directly across the street would be greatly devalued. And I'm certain of that from talking to people. I wouldn't want to live across from it. My son, his wife, and they wouldn't want to live across from it. I'm also concerned of the environmental aspects of radiation from the lines and the inverters and stuff like that, but that's sort of another part of it right there. But I would like to have the option of someday, if I needed that money, and the conservation district right now would allow me to sell something if I needed to, and I would not be able to, I don't believe, if certainly a very limited market of people would want to live that close to that industrial type of development across the street. So I just want you to take that into consideration and remember that we narrowly avoided a disaster. Anybody that looks at that area would know that would have been a disaster for that to occur. I even think that some of you who voted, even though it didn't pass, some of you that voted, for the solar to be built there, allowed to be built there, thought you had to do so according to keeping up with the law and the guidelines and all like that. But from what I understood of the law, I mean, you guys should be able to make a judgment on conditional uses. but not give unconditional rain to utilities of whatever source, whether it's solar, whether it's wind, whether it's coal, whether it's nuclear. I mean, just because they're a utility, they can just cover the whole land with everything. I believe, from what I understand of the law, the Levy Court would be able to turn that down. So I don't know if we need a moratorium or not. Whatever the cause is, that whatever it would take to avert disaster, that's what I ask you to do. Sir.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Party Jr. I have 269 acres. That's adjacent to the Herd Farm, and my farm now is in land preservation, farmland preservation. It was started back in the last century, in the 80s or 90s, where the General Assembly and all like that turned around, as you all know, put so much money over to the Department of Agriculture to turn around and buy into the farmland to keep it in farmland. And that has been very successful, I think. A lot of money has gone over to the Department of Agriculture, and a lot of farmland has been bought by, the acreage and all like that. I do understand that you can buy it back. I could buy mine back, but I have no intentions of doing that. I have a 26-year-old boy who is Mrs. Hurd's grandson. He tills my farm. Within a mile radius of my home, there are 5 other young men from age 20 to 35 that are farming with their fathers. They're all farmers in my area. The other day I was talking to the young man, and he averaged on some of his land shelling corn better than 300 bushels per acre. And I remember back in the 60s, because I'm 83 years old, that if you hit 100 bushels to the acre, boy, you really did something. And all the grain in our area basically is being hauled down to North Little Creek Road to Mountain Air. They bought the Cartanza grain farms. And that corn and all the soybeans that's in our area is going down to Mountain Air. It'll be feeding chickens. Some of it goes down. Some of the fellas have their own trucks, and they haul down to Fruitland to Purdue. But all this grain is staying here on the peninsula and allowing our young gentlemen today to go ahead and farm. We have some of the best land on the east side of Route 1, as you all know. It's heavy, it holds some moisture, and it really has the nutrients. It really produces crops. And Commissioner Buxton knows down in his area, his district, he has Brandon Bunk, and look what he's doing, the grain bins he's put up, the acreages he's tilling, buying, leasing, in the same way up in our area, and all like that, all the way up above Fleming's land, and all like that in Newcastle County. So, excuse me, I hope that all of you consider that to keep the land, if you can, in the east side of Route 1 is agriculture. When I put mine in farm preservation, I had to go through a minor subdivision so I could take 5 acres out of my name and put it jointly in my wife's and my name for estate planning. And so, but that's another thing, but we really like the area the way it is. And I know conditional use, you all can grant that. And I know supposedly, and it came from a good source, that they all have to have a bond. Well, I was in the petroleum industry for 40 years. And I know a jobber that was bonded by the state of Delaware on the motor fuel tax. And I know that when you paid the motor fuel tax back then, you paid it the last day of the month for the gallons that you sold the previous month. So you basically sold gasoline and diesel fuel for 60 days before the state of Delaware even got any money. He didn't pay his bond. It came due annually. He filed Chapter 13. and motor fuel tax lost over $100,000. So that's something else for you to look into when you decide what you're going to do with the solar panels. I'm not against it. We need it. From what the weather is, from my father told me back, and my grandparents, and my age, we are having global warming. There's no doubt about it. We didn't even have any snow in Kent County last year or the year before. So, you know, we need solar panels, we need wind, whatever, if you can have it here in this area. But we need to take it and put it in the right place and not take something that's really productive out of production to put in solar panels. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else wishes to come down and speak? Seeing none, Mr. President, back to you.
We better check these in, one's online.
Oh, well, I forgot about that.
Mark, do we have anyone?
So at this time, we're going to open up the floor for those who would like to make comments on WebEx. You can indicate by raising your hand or pressing *3 if you're joining by phone, and we will let you into the meeting. We have 21 people joining online, but no one wishes to speak at this time.
Taking that, I'll assume that that means we can close the public comments and move on to the next agenda item.
Thank you, Commissioner Buxton. The next committee meeting on the agenda is Community Services Committee. Mr. Sweeney is chair, and all you folks are more than welcome to stay if you'd like, but we'll probably be here another hour or two, so you can want to take your leave. You're welcome. But thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. We do appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just give them a few seconds, Ms. Shepherd, and then get started.
Or waiting for it to cool, or waiting for it to calm down. Might want to recommend we take a look at setting the order of the agenda next time.
Agreed. Maybe make things like that the only thing on the agenda.
Yeah, Ms. Gold, if you could close that door, please. Ms. Shepherd, you proceed.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, commissioners. Does anybody want to take a
You're only going to talk about a park truck.
quick stretch or something? Real quick?
You're only going to talk
Jumping
about
jacks?
a park. Jeremy, you're only going to talk about a park truck tonight.
What's that again?
You're only going to talk about a park truck tonight after all that.
Oh
All in
no,
favor of
I'm
moving
going to
this
talk
forward
about
to
two
a-
park trucks.
All in
Sorry,
favor of
two.
move this forward to a consent agenda?
Yes. Yeah, in your packet, received a memo and backup documentation for the purchase of two park trucks funded in FY20 and FY21. We did come up a little bit short on the funding. We are looking to take that from reserves. Wait a second, I gotta get that exactly right. Parks Capital Projects Contingency. So again, these are trucks that we use on a daily basis. We put plows on them to, plow our parks out, especially a rec center. Heavily used vehicles. Per Levy Court's wishes, we did price out CNG or compressed natural gas conversion costs. We did learn a few things. First thing is that these types of trucks, these smaller trucks, this is a 3/4 ton, so a 250 or 2500, depending on which brand you like, do not come from the factory with the CNG conversion, or it doesn't come from the factory. So we had to try to source potential conversion. There's only one outfit that does it in the state of Delaware that we know of. through our research. We did get a price from them. It is shown there at a little over $13,000 per vehicle, and so on and so forth. So really, staff recommendation at this time is to just purchase the trucks. It's going to take a while for us to get those trucks. These are Fords. They are the only one on the state contract. If we didn't take the state contract, we'd be going out to bid, which also takes an amount of time, and then potentially, depending on the shortage of trucks at that point, could take just as long or longer too. Also, just the information, we are unable to, at this time, to trade in vehicles. Normally we will trade in a vehicle when we get a new vehicle, simply because the wait time to get a new vehicle is so long. They will not give us a price until it's time to actually make that transaction. So the price is what it is at this point. All things considered, what I've heard on the regular market with people that I know that are buying trucks these days, $36,000 is a heck of a deal for a quad cab, 3/4 ton pickup truck, gas, V8. Good to go. Any questions, commissioners?
Seeing none, all in favor to move with this forward to the consent agenda, sir? Mr. Howe, do you agree to the consent agenda?
Yes.
Thank you. Any public comment?
Yes, I do.
Thanks, Glenn. Any public comment? Seeing none, back to you, Mr. President.
There was a hand raised just as we were concluding the last item. So Peggy Schultz would like to comment this time.
May proceed.
You may proceed, Peggy.
I think I'm unmuted now. My name is Peggy Schultz, and I have comments on the moratorium issue. It's challenging to run an industrial society on renewable sources, as one of our earlier speakers said. Some consider some of these renewable energy sources unpleasant to look at. I suggest that it will be even more challenging to run an industrial society underwater, and that it will be really ugly to look at. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says we're in trouble and that we have only about 10 years to get our act together. DNREC says that we'll lose between 8 and 11% of our land mass by 2100 because of sea level rise. That's going to be not only expensive, but in many cases heartbreaking. We clearly need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We need to halt climate change. And we need our precious farmland. And we also need to get to a net zero greenhouse gas emission level by 2050. If we give up our farmland, we're going to have even more of an emissions problem if we have to get our agricultural products from a distance. We need a critical mass of farmland or the industry goes downhill. Grading farmland on a scale sounds like a smart idea so that solar is not installed on fertile ag land. Let's not shoot ourselves in the foot by removing either ag land or solar. Solar on our endless parking lots and solar on warehouses will work. Let's explore those possibilities. Using our native good sense and working together, we'll work this out. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
If there's anyone else on WebEx that would like to make a comment regarding the last item that was heard, you can press *3 or hit the raise hand icon to make comments at this time. There are no hands raised.
Thank you, sir. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Public Works Committee. Mr. Howe, Commissioner Angel, Mr. Vice President, will you handle that for Commissioner Howe, please? It might be kind of easier than for him to do it online over the phone.
Go ahead, Ms. Cole.
The item before you tonight is a 900 megahertz licensed radio equipment purchase for Phase 1B and Phase 2. Based on some research we pursued a 900 megahertz 5-watt radio system instead of the existing 1-watt system that we're currently using. We received proposals from companies, and we pursued licensing through FCC. And in May, we got the 6 licenses. In July, we bought 18 radios and installed them, and they are performing well. So at this point, we're looking to move forward with the next radio purchases. The radios are a sole source. Basically, the radios need to be the same brand, so the radios can talk to the main radio base. And what it's set up at different tower locations. There's a radio base, as well as one at the treatment plant. So the next phase, Phase 1B, is $49,055.04. But the company 4RF USA, which was the low bidder when we bought the first set of radios, has indicated that they'll hold the price until July 31st, 2022. This project was budgeted over 2 years. It's budgeted in the current budget, FY22, as well as the FY23 budgets. And the department recommends that we move forward with the purchases, and there's a motion set up for the commissioners to consider.
Any questions for Diana?
Oh, I'm sorry. I also forgot the second phase of the project brings it to $110,373.84. That might be important to get the full amount, so that both numbers are covered in the memo for Phase 1B and Phase 2. But the total is $110,373.84.
Any other questions for Diana? Ms. Call. Moving forward to the business or consent?
Thank you.
6 up. Thank you. Thank you, Glenn.
Sure.
Public comments? Any public comments? Anybody online?
Again, if there's anyone that's online who would like to make comments on this item, please press *3. There's no one wishing to speak at this time.
Thank you. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next committee, Finance Committee, Mrs. Maston, Chair. Turn to you, ma'am.
Susan, would you like to lead?
Sure. Been waiting all night for this opportunity. So, do it. That's right. So anyway, this is to discuss the camera system called IAS World. And currently we have Patriot, and we're just finishing up our Patriot conversion, and we did use Patriot 2 this year for our camera system, for our assessed values of our property, and did our tax billing from it. When Tyler won the RFP proposal, they offered to give us technically they call it giving us IAS World, and that would make us compatible it would accomplish 2 things. It would make us compatible with all 3 counties being assessed with the same software. Because Sussex has it, Newcastle's getting it as we speak, and then we would have it also. And the other thing, let's see. I'm tired. Gosh, I forget what I was going to say now.
More compatibility with the Tyler ERP?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Phew, went off of that. I was on to the next thought. Okay. And then we were getting the Tyler ERP. So, yes, so there's compatibility with that. So, through several talks and negotiations with Tyler, I wanted to make sure of a couple of things and involved Kim and IT with this. And that is the conversion of the history. They did check the history that we wanted converted, and it was decided that they would go ahead and do that for no additional cost. And then the decision was made a couple of weeks ago that you were going to go with a SaaS system instead of an on-premise system for the ERP product. And so I asked them for pricing for that, and that's what's in your memo. So there was a comparison done that on-premise it would be almost $100,000, and then on their site, software as a service, it would be $130,000. So staying in that theme, we're recommending to do the SaaS. It's a different, we currently don't have the hardware for the IAS world. It's an Oracle-based system, and we would have to go out and buy that anyway. So it was a prudent move to go ahead and do it with the SaaS. Is there any questions?
Any commissioner have a question? Hands up if everybody agrees to move forward. Mr. Howe? Hello?
Mr. Howell has dropped off the call, fortunately. Hopefully he'll call back in soon.
Okay, 6 up, I suppose. Any public comment? Anyone on the line have comments?
Anyone on WebEx wishing to make comments at this time, please press *3 to raise your hand. I see no hands raised on WebEx at this time.
Having no public comment, we'll adjourn the Finance Committee and turn it over to President Pepper.
Thank you. Administration Committee, Commissioner Angel, Chair.
Excuse me, Commissioner Angel.
Oh, yeah, come on down.
Commissioner Angel, can I make just a suggestion? The third on the list is an important packet of information that I think warrants a good discussion, but time is not of the essence. Would it be wise maybe to move this to the next committee meeting at a different date, given the time that we're in? Something to think about.
Okay with that. If anybody else?
There's no time of the essence. It doesn't harm it. I did speak to Mr. Pettit-Dimaggio about the thought.
Ms.
Pettit-Dimaggio, you okay with that?
Yeah, no objection. Ms. Masson's fine with that too.
Yeah, I'm fine on.
Okay.
I would like to apologize to Kim, who stood here the whole freaking night. Well, wait a minute, you guys aren't here for the holiday? I didn't know the ripple effect that it would create. I didn't realize that. Honestly, did not.
Beats Boone's Farm.
Mr. Angel?
Mr.
I
Quayle.
know they were here for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Angel, commissioners. So I think it's well known that near the end of the legislative session, the state of Delaware adopted Juneteenth as a state holiday, and before that, President Biden made Juneteenth a federal holiday. So probably no surprise that I'm before you proposing we make Juneteenth a county holiday. And in the preparation of the motion, we thought it would be a good time to update and better word some provisions of the ordinance, personnel ordinance, in particular the holiday section. So as you can see, we tried to better define how the holidays are selected and who's eligible for it, because as you probably know, the unions collectively bargain the holidays specifically that they observe. So in the proposal, Section 1A would add Juneteenth.
Alan,
Yes.
President Pepper has it.
They finished.
Okay.
June 13th, which would basically add it as an additional holiday for the county. In B and in C, it used to say legal holiday, and that seemed a bit of a quandary considering that President's Day is no longer a legal holiday in the state of Delaware. And interesting enough, it's never been a federal holiday. It's always been Washington's birthday. So it seemed better way to identify it as an official Kent County holiday rather than legal. In D, that needed significant rewording, as you can see, so we are proposing just to delete that portion and very specifically state what happens when you work on a holiday. And in case you're unaware, if you have to work on a county holiday, you are paid double time. Basically, you get twice your hourly rate, and you get holiday pay, which is 8 hours. But we did get some comments from some of our 24/7 staff that noted that when Christmas and New Year's fall on the weekend, because it's observed on the Friday or the Monday afterwards, they work Christmas Day for straight the regular rate. And they asked if there was some way that they could maybe be rewarded for having to work on a holiday when most people are home enjoying their family. And so we have included language that would essentially give anyone who physically works on Christmas Day or New Year's Day compensating time off. So if they're a dispatcher and they've worked 12 hours on Christmas Day, they get 12 hours of vacation accrued. So essentially still double time. Now, those are two floating holidays that rotate through the calendar. There are a couple of more. If you were to move forward, obviously Juneteenth would be a rotating, basically moves through the week holiday, as is July 4th and Veterans Day. I did not include this in the language, although if the commissioners were interested in doing so, we certainly could put that in the final version that would hopefully be introduced next week for hearing, since this is an ordinance amendment. In paragraph E, basically we just tried to better define that. And then in paragraph F, we have removed all the language, unnecessary language related to special holidays, because you really address that via policy, and tried to come up with a way to deal with the day after Christmas. And you wonder why we have to deal with it. We learned recently that if you really wanted to literally take the day after Christmas off, and Christmas fell on Sunday, which would be observed on Monday, there really isn't a provision in the ordinance that would allow you to observe any designated holiday, say on that Tuesday, which is logical, but we have many literal employees working for the county. So we tried to come up with a way to fix that, and the way to do that we thought might be to allow the president of Levy Court just to decide how, in that rare circumstance, every 5, 6, or so 7 years, when Christmas Day falls on a Sunday, he could designate it, say, the previous Friday, or indeed, if he wanted it to be Tuesday, he could do that instead. Now, when you read the words, it's a little difficult, so if you were inclined to move forward with that language, we would probably clean it up a little bit just so it's even easier to understand, and that would be incorporated into the version that would be provided to you to be introduced at next week's meeting if you want to move forward. Back to you, Commissioner Angel.
President Pepper. You stated something about, you did specifically mention something in this, but if we need to, you will. I kind of missed that there, kind of got muffled. Did I misunderstand or didn't I hear right? So there was something in there that you said you didn't specifically put in writing but if we need to, we can.
So there's some language in there about the president being able to designate which day the day after Christmas is observed. If you chose to move it to, say, the Friday when Christmas falls on a Sunday, because if you think about it, you're actually observing Christmas when it falls on a Sunday on the day after Christmas, which is a Monday, and do you really need 2 days after Christmas? But it might be nice for you to be able to move it to Sunday, the day before Christmas Eve. So that language is in there. As far as what you might be able to insert was, right now the policy is only addressing those folks who work on a Saturday or Sunday when it is a holiday. I only wrote it for Christmas and for New Year's Day. However, if the commissioners would like to also give employees who work on July 4th, the actual day, which can fall on a Saturday or a Sunday, compensating time off as vacation, we can incorporate that. And the same for Veterans Day, and now potentially the same for Juneteenth, if you would like that, or you could just limit it to Christmas Day and New Year's Day as it is currently written.
Probably clearer if you spelled it out the way you said it the first time. But did you receive some correspondence from the 24/7 staff at Call Takers?
Yes.
Does this address their concerns?
So their original request was obviously for all those floating holidays to be incorporated. When I drafted it, I followed some existing language that's in your union contracts, and they only address Christmas and New Year's. But if you're inclined, we certainly can insert those 3 other days in the language presented next week for introduction.
What's the negative of doing that?
Well, the negatives are obviously it accrues a lot more vacation for employees, potentially, well, this would be 2 times, would add 3 more days of that. So that'd be that much more time off, which, could potentially mean more overtime for those folks who have to fill in for the people who's got to take the time off. So, there's always a cost. When it accrues to vacation, obviously, a little less than a direct cost, such as double time, but a cost nonetheless.
Alan, basically, though, if a holiday falls on a Saturday, we usually get Friday, and if it's on a Sunday, we get Monday, right?
It does, yes, and that's specifically listed in the ordinance language. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Commissioner Buxton?
Want to hold this up? You said a lot. I'm not quite sure everything that we're voting on. If we stay specific to the one we're discussing, I think that there is merit in having somebody who had to work on a Christmas day being compensated in some form or fashion. And currently, right now, we don't. If it's on Saturday or Sunday.
That's correct. They just make their straight time.
So is it silly enough to say I think they should get a day? I don't think 12 hours, but 8 hours would be a fair, just compensation, or is 12 a mandate?
So the way it is worded is whatever you work, and obviously the schedule for dispatchers, they work 2 12s. Your paramedics work 2 10s and 2 14s. So,
okay.
Yes. So it would be whatever hours they work, they would just equal amount of hours of vacation.
Okay, I didn't digest that accurately. Let me ask you one last question then. We're not saying that a person who works Christmas Saturday who also got off and got compensated because we gave Friday, that's not in this conversation, right? That they somehow got off on Friday for a vacation day, right? But now they're getting compensated for the Saturday because it's Christmas Day.
Right,
Is that what we're saying?
So if Christmas fell on a Saturday, the county is closed on Friday, and everybody gets 8 hours of holiday pay. If you normally work on Friday, especially you have the day off. If you don't normally work on Friday, you still get paid holiday pay because it's a holiday, 8 hours. And then if you find yourself working on Saturday under this provision, you would earn however many hours you work that day, Christmas Day, you'd earn an equal amount of vacation hours. Well, they don't work on Saturday, so they would not get anything. They get Friday off, yes. Okay.
I want to ask the questions. I move forward. What do you think?
I think the idea behind it was, and we heard from the employees, was when they have to work on the actual holiday and it's on a weekend, there's no additional compensation for that. It's straight time when everyone else is home having a feast or whatever on Christmas Day and they're working. And they'll get the holiday like everyone else gets whenever it is, but on that actual day when the rest of the world shuts down, they're still working. It was a little extra. It was.
It's your work. I don't know.
It's if you think about it, it's really just treating, at least the way it's written, those two holidays when they fall on the weekend, just like Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, everybody's off. But if you're working, you're getting paid double time, and you're getting 8 hours of holiday pay, essentially triple time, on Thanksgiving. But that's in the middle of the week. Everybody else is off on Friday. So it's never been recognized that way. They've never had the opportunity to get double time when it fell on a Saturday or any extra time.
Secondary question is whether or not to include the other holidays. My concern is if you try to exclude them, I don't know. I'm willing to listen. What do you guys think?
Yeah. It's certainly a discussion because, well, they've been excluded up until potentially right now. So they've always been excluded. So, yeah, now it's just, do you want to do them all? Do you want to do what you consider the most important of the holidays, Christmas being, a particularly important time for many people, but also the other days are equally important.
I would argue are a nationally recognized holiday that rotate. Challenging time to dissect which one is my most favorite. I mean, I can do that.
Sure.
I don't have a problem. I don't know if you want to legislate that way, but so is that a decision that's already been made? We're going to give them all of them or not?
Or you can choose to give them none and not accrue any vacation, but that was a request.
Decision tonight? Mm-hmm. So we can move on. We're not supposed to. All right, well.
So if I could, just want to be very clear. So you're saying you would like the basically 5 holidays that move through the calendar to qualify for the equal vacation days hours, right? Not just Christmas and New Year's, but also Juneteenth, also July 4th, and also Veterans Day.
Unique to Kent County?
Well, it probably will be. But we're a very unique place.
Ooh.
But Alan, don't most companies today, if you work a holiday, don't you normally get triple time?
You get, for most places, you do get double time. You may not get an extra 8 hours of holiday pay, but that is what we do.
But typically, every holiday a person works, they get more than straight time.
Yes. For most course places, they wouldn't be working on Saturday or Sunday either.
And the problem this is trying to solve is when the holidays on a weekend, our policy for all the other employees, it shifts to either Friday or Monday.
Right.
So you get a 3-day weekend for, non-essential or 24-hour services. So I think that's the issue here. When 4th of July lands on a Saturday, we take Friday off. But these people are still working Friday. They'll get double time. The people are working, but then they're actually having to work the actual holiday. When everyone's watching fireworks, they're working.
Yeah, right. They were getting straight time. So if you just happen to be scheduled to work Friday, you got double time.
And this would, in addition to straight time, they would get additional hours
They
of
get,
vacation.
Yes, they would accrue equal hours of vacation, straight to the vacation, no comp time or holiday comp, anything, just straight to your vacation account.
Not looking at a yearly significance of this policy, right? It doesn't happen yearly for most of the dates, right?
Right,
They
it
don't,
would only happen
right.
what, every 5-6 years, throw in leap years, I guess
Yeah.
it moves it around.
I don't know. I'll follow your lead. It seems fair.
Based on that, it's not a significant cost.
It seems fair. If I was in their shoes, I get it.
Basically, Alan, we're just clearing this up and getting it, because the Juneteenth day precipitated this whole discussion because we added it as a holiday.
Yes.
Because of the federal government.
Yes,
So we're just
Juneteenth,
clearing
yes,
it up.
but that is a holiday.
Anybody else?
All right. So if hearing what you've just advised, I will incorporate that in the draft ordinance to be introduced next week with a hearing maybe in mid-November, like the 16th. So I won't be here the 9th.
So we'll have that motion then. Okay. Anybody else? Move it forth in business? Consent?
No, you're
Nope.
moving it forward
Okay.
for introduction.
Not
It's an
consent.
ordinance, yes. So.
Thank you. Go ahead, Alan, the last one.
Okay, Commissioners, as I know you recall, during the budget process, you incorporated the pay study into the budget, and as you hopefully know, on July 1st, we made all those adjustments to comply with the recommendations of the pay study. And part of the contract with the consultant was to rewrite all of the job descriptions. And so they have done that, and staff has reviewed them, made some adjustments, mostly to ADA requirements. We put the new grade numbers in there, and the like, and then shared them with the various department heads to revise, make recommendations regarding their revisions, especially as a results as it applies to the duties, because they certainly know what's required of the position, and also making any adjustments to additional requirements, educational requirements, and like. The consultant used, obviously, the job position questionnaire, which was all employees had an opportunity to complete early in the pay study process. And then supervisors reviewed those JPQ responses, and the consultant also took a look at job positions and responsibilities and duties, and obviously the pay of jobs that were in the marketplace, and used all that to develop I'll say the very rough draft job descriptions, which were fine-tuned by Human Resources, sent to the various department heads, and they have now sent them back, or they're in the process of sending them back. And out of the 185 or so position descriptions, I'm able to provide you for most of the departments. That would include the Community Services Department, the Public Safety Department, Planning Services Department, and at least 3 of the row offices. But more importantly is I've included all of the deputy and chief deputy position descriptions in your packet. And of course, gave you some instructions to look at the others if you're interested in looking at that, 90 or so. And the reason why the deputies and chief deputies are in your packet, and certainly very important, is there's statutory language that requires the Levy Court and the row officer to agree to any changes made to a job description. It's not written anywhere that Levy Court has to approve position descriptions, more just a tradition, but not required in any policy or ordinance. But it is a statutory requirement that you approve the deputy position descriptions, and the row officer themselves have to approve. So it has been submitted to them, and the versions that you are seeing in your packet include the language that they wanted, especially as it relates to job duties and educational requirements, minimum requirements. So this is really a two-step process. Obviously, this is half. Hopefully you don't have any very specific questions because I have a computer in front of me, so I wouldn't be able to look at a specific job description right now, but I could get back to you. One other component of this is back when we were implementing the pay study, as you may recall, back in March 13th of 20 is when the pay study was completed. And then Levy Court subsequently reclassified, retitled, and added some positions that were not part of the pay study. You did this after. So as we were implementing the recommendations into the pay plan and into the payroll system, I had to consult, and I did many times, with the pay study consultant about how we needed to place those. You'd say, give me an example position that you might recall. You approved the dispatch shift supervisor. That came after the pay study was done. You approved the EMS operations officer. That came after the pay study was completed. And more importantly, and to the point, you approved the GIS administrator. GIS administrator was moved from the Planning Services Department up to the IT office under Department of Administration, and you reclassified the position. But I failed to inform the consultant after that. So he never changed the recommendation to his original classification of that position. So in consulting him, when we discovered in really July or August that, hey, this doesn't seem right, and confirmed with him that it was based on the position as it was, not as it is now, he recommended that that classification be adjusted, and that is also part of the motions that you'd be asked to consider, along with that revised job description eventually. And it's back to you, Chairman Angel.
Any questions for Mr. Quayla? I have one, Alan. Just on the deputy sheriff and chief deputy, on the back it says special certifications and license requirements. Would military police come into that requirement for possible usage to be added there on the?
So as far as the minimum qualifications, you'll notice on the page in front of it, the sheriff did make an adjustment to include military experience as a qualification, a minimum requirement for.
I think I missed that.
For the deputies. Mm-hmm. It used to be very specifically worded to, I guess, encourage police officers to be deputies, but he wanted to expand it, and that's so what you are reading for your deputies have been approved by the elected row officials. So when you finally adopt a motion approving all the job descriptions, you should be in compliance with the statute that requires that.
Ms. Masson and Mr. Buxton.
Mr. Quayle, a question. Assuming that there's a current employee that's slotted in each of these jobs, back when the pay study was done, if these position descriptions are approved, is there anybody in these job positions that will have to have a salary adjustment upward or downward as a result of these position descriptions being updated?
So the only one that would, and I've mentioned that very specifically, is the GIS administrator, because that one would be reclassified differently than what the original pay study, keeping in mind the pay study was a year old when it was finally approved by Levy Court. So everything in there was a bit dated, but when you approve the position descriptions, they will include all of the current pay grades and not require any reclassification other than that one that I've just mentioned.
Thank you.
Mr. Buxton?
Good question. You explained what we already approved, and now we're going through the formalities of the process. And there's nobody that disagrees with it at the administration level that I'm aware of. There you go. All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. President?
Alan, when will you be bringing the rest of them?
So my hope is the first committee meeting in November, which I believe that's what the second,
I believe, yeah.
So, I mean, those are three relatively big departments. As you imagine, Public Works, a massive undertaking. But I do know that Diana's working on it. Administration department and all the job descriptions for the department heads have been drafted for the county administrator's review. So those are not included in the bunch that's out there right this minute.
So these can get advanced now, and then the batch that you bring forward on the 2nd of November will be dealt with then?
Sure, we could do that. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Move this forth for the business meeting consent. 6. Thank you. Okay. Any public comments? Mr. Public, you want to come down and give us anything? What I just said. Just my last 3.
Oh, yeah.
2.
Okay, so number 1, that falls underneath the 12-hour vacation. Okay, great. Hi, I'm Mark McGuire. I think it's a great idea if a first responder has to work on a weekend that they are compensated even though they got their 8 hours. Because if you worked Friday, you'd be off. And mainly it sounds like you're going to be dispatch or paramedics. And, well, that encourages them not to be sick or, be there for the community when they are needed. So I think it's a great idea. I mean, if they were going to pay them double on Friday, you might as well, give them some vacation time. So that's the only thing I really have to.
Good point. Good point. Thanks, Mark.
I appreciate it, yes. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And thanks for hanging in there with us.
Oh, it's been very informative.
Mark, do you have anybody online?
Mr. Angel, Mr. Angel.
Sorry.
I just wanted to, we just brought up a point that maybe I didn't emphasize enough when we were talking about the changes to the changes. Perhaps I didn't emphasize enough when we were discussing the changes. As you know, we have 2 employee groups that collectively bargain. So this was written very specifically not to include them because they do bargain their holidays in their contracts. I just wanted to be clear about that.
Gotcha. Thank you. Mark, do we have anybody online?
I see no hands raised at this time.
One last call. Back to you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Mr. County Administrator, do we have anything afterwards?
No, sir. And the one item that is being postponed, we'll move that to the 2nd of November, if that's okay with everybody.
That'll work.
Thank you.
Seeing nothing further, we are adjourned. Leadership tomorrow, Mr. President? I'm fine with it. Yeah.